Okay.
Thank you very much.
Here's the pen. Thank you.
Again, the St. Patrick's Choir. That was a nice rendition. They were cute. At this time, we are going to hand out sort of the prizes for those students who won the Christmas card drawing contest. The cards were the winner, and plus all the runners-up are displayed in front of us. The children who, when they receive their prize, if they could come over and stand in front of their picture, and then we'll have, hopefully the press will take a picture of the whole group. So Danielle Smith is our first one, and Danielle is from Oakwood School. If she could come forward. Danielle, I'll give you your little certificate first. Not quite clear in my throat. Danielle's picture is of Santa driving the tugboat, as he did a week ago. And he was selected to be on the front of the car. The other pictures will be inside the car. So, Danielle, I can present this to you. You have your own batch of Christmas cards that you can use to send out to your friends and family. Take that. Okay. Thank you. We can go stand by in front of the card there. Again, we have a framed copy for each of those in the frame there. Next, I'd like to call up Jason Zimmer. He's in grade 5 at St. Teresa's School. Jason, with a lip bridge and in the center. Congratulations. Batch of Christmas cards for all your friends. Next, we have Nathan Saltarelli, a great, Jason, we'll go stand in front of your painting or picture, Christmas card. Nathan Saltarelli is a grade 4 student from St. Patrick's School. Nathan's picture is a large snowman with candy canes. Congratulations, Nathan. Next, we have Ella Scott, a grade 5 student at St. Teresa's. Ella drew a picture of colorful Christmas ornaments. Like that color. Congratulations. And then finally, we have Reese Kurtz. He's a grade 6 student at Oakwood School. She is. Reese. Reese's picture shows Santa and his reindeer flying over the Clarence Street Bridge. We wish we had a couple more these days.
Thank you.
Okay. Members of the press would like to come forward and take a wonderful picture of these master artists.
We need to get real close.
Might even try later.
How's she going, buddy?
Can we squeeze them just a little bit?
Stanford's coming to try.
The space in between shoulders.
All right, I'm gonna get you guys looking at me for a couple. Okay, nice smiles everywhere. Nice smiles everywhere. So, there we go. Just nice one. Good.
So these are the official Christmas cards for the city of Port Colborne.
Oh, now each student, we have these pictures for you to take home as well. Yeah, I lost it. Hope you got a big card, Danielle. Where are you?
Those members of the audience who are here, part of the picture brigade, you're welcome to leave at any time, or you're welcome to stay to what might be a lengthy end this evening. Again, Christmas is a great time of the year, and kids make it all. At this time, we'll return to the formal part of our agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
I call for a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Butters. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one with item 5 on the agenda, as it involves Shirkston Shores, and I have a business inside there, so I won't
Thank you.
participate in that.
We'll note that, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole, 26 number 15, held on November 23rd, 2015. Would I have a motion to adopt those minutes? Moved by Councillor Desmarais and second by Councillor Main. Any questions or discussion, errors or omissions? There being none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now we'd like to go through determination of items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Kenny?
I'll pull number 5 for the councillor's conflict, and number 7, please. And a request for number 7 to be moved up at the very beginning of the discussions tonight, before all the other items. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any other items? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Number 2.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3, 4, and 15.
Three, 4, and 15. To my right, Councillor Main.
Number 6 and number 16, please.
6 and 16. Councilor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 18, please.
Councilor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 13 and 14.
13 and 14.
Yes, please.
Calling one more time. Any items for separate discussion? We have them all? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve those items not requiring separate discussion? Moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Doucette. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. With your indulgence, B, I think I'd like to proceed with the presentations first.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's fine. I would call upon Deputy Fire Chief Mike Bendia to come forward and introduce to us Scott Lawson, a new Fire Prevention Officer.
Your Worship, Mayor Maloney, Louis, and members of council, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Scott Lawson, our most recent hire in Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services as our Fire Prevention Officer. I hesitate to say our new Fire Prevention Officer because that means I'm the old one. But Scott comes to us from St. Catharines Fire as a fully certified fire inspector. With a huge background in public education. We were very fortunate to get Scott with his experience and the amount of qualifications that he has. So we look forward to some good things. He's been very busy since he came here in September. He's already had the privilege of meeting some of our landlords. So we are moving forward with a lot of different things and be enhancing our fire prevention, our public education program greatly. So without any delay, Scott Lawson.
At first, I have to say I thought the crowd was for me. I'm a little disappointed, but we will continue on. I was told I have about 5 minutes, and the chief's kind of giving me a little bit of direction. But what I wanted to talk to is the 2 of the 3 lines of defense that the fire department takes care of: public education, code enforcement, and of course the chief would only be the one that would talk about suppression. Pub ed is a big belief in mine. As you've heard in the recent months, the chief has talked about the issues we have with smoke alarms in our city. Part of our pub ed, what we've done is we've gone out into the community and made partnerships. The biggest one is with Lakeshore High School right now. They've been starting to create videos for us on Facebook. And when I get home, I'm hoping to see a bunch more likes for our Facebook page. Right now, with our first video, we had over 6,000 reaches pushing our smoke alarm program. We've also gotten out, I have a great partnership with 91.7, the radio station just on our border. We've also created new partnerships with DSBN, the schools. We want to get our young kids educated so as they grow up, hopefully the complacency isn't there. The second line of defense is code enforcement. Honestly, I wish I could say that I brought something special to Port Colborne, but many of you that know Deputy Chief Bendia, a leader in this region when it comes to code enforcement, I can only hope that I can reach his potential or have that potential one day. Once again, I urge you, please go on our Facebook, support that, get the word out that smoke alarms, without them, folks, unfortunately, we're going to have some very bad news in the newspapers coming up. With Christmas, again, we're having guests over into our house. Please make sure that your smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, are there working to help protect our guests. Candles, a great thing. We love to see lots of candles. And this one's to satisfy the chief that I am mentioning candles. Make sure that we have sturdy containers. Let's keep them away from flammables, at least a good 3 feet. If anything, I was at, not that this is an ad for Costco, but we have those little battery-operated lights. They set a beautiful mood, and they're totally safe for us. Okay? That's my little message for you. I'm looking extremely forward to working for the City of Port Colborne. If you guys have any questions, fire them at me. If not, of course, you guys can always contact me at the fire hall. Thank you.
Any questions for Scott? Councillor Maine.
Yeah, Scott, I would just like to take the opportunity to thank you for coming to Port Colborne. I think you're going to bring good things here, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of all of Council, Scott, we welcome you to Port Colborne.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're glad to have you. Our second presenter this evening is Mr. Carmen D'Angelo, who is the CEO of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and he's accompanied by Bruce Timms, who's the chair of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do appreciate the opportunity to represent the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority this evening. Especially happy about the invitation for tonight's festivities. The choir was great, and I've heard this council sing "O Canada" before, so this was a pleasure. And I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your service on the board of the Conservation Authority. Your attendance is regular, and your advice and your input is respected and valued. So thank you for your participation on the board. Just will allow Carmen, our CAO, to present the Conservation Authority's response to the provincial review of the Conservation Authorities Act. Just wanted to give you a little background in that this is being reviewed across the province. As you're well aware, there's 36 conservation authorities across the province, and I've been able to attend Conservation Ontario, which is an association of all the boards, all the conservation authorities across Ontario. And what we are presenting tonight is the position of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is very much in common with what the rest of the province, what the rest of the conservation authorities are saying about the Act. And there's the primary thing that is, has been a concern is that we support the continued authority of the funding municipalities to appoint the members of the board of the conservation authorities. There has been some concern that perhaps there should be more farmers, there should be more special interest groups, but we have remained committed to the notion that the funding municipality should maintain that authority. Whether you appoint the mayor, a councillor, or an interested citizen, it should remain with the municipality. I also had the opportunity to serve on the AMO task force on the Conservation Authorities Act review and also the wetlands policy review. And again, we are very much in tune with most of the rest of the province on those two acts. The same common interest, and I guess we're not talking about the wetland comments tonight, but that has been a common theme across the province, is the provincial designation of wetlands from a very high level, what they call a spring flyover, has caused concern across the province in that there's not enough what they call ground proofing or ground truthing. There's not enough verification on the ground to see what is really a wetland or what is an abandoned drainage system, an old farmer's field. So we have the interest weeks, the commitments we make tonight, or the policies we present tonight, are very much in tune with most of the rest of the province. So bear that in mind, and Carmen will answer all of your questions, Mr. Mayor. And I'll turn the podium over to Carmen now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timms. Carmen, welcome.
Thank you. Sure. Good evening, Mayor Maloney, members of City Council. It's again my pleasure here to come to you and talk to you about our response to the Conservation Authorities Act. But by all means, if you have any other issues you'd like to talk to me about related to our services and programs, more than happy to answer those questions. I just want to start off by saying it's always a pleasure working with your staff. You have a very good, talented group of staff that we work with day in, day out, and just want to say we have a good working relationship, and I thank your staff for that. And I haven't been here since you hired your new CAO, so congratulations. You have a really good CAO guiding you administratively with Scott Louis. So just to form a basis of what we do, we have a legislative mandate. So in essence, what we do is we have conservation, restoration, management, and development of our natural resources. So that's our legislative mandate, those 4 pillars. And we embarked on a strategic plan that, you know, although conservation is in our name, we also have 3 other pillars when it comes to the management, development, and our restoration programs. Our mission is to manage our watershed's natural resources by balancing environmental, community, and economic needs. We are a regulator. We do. We have a legislative authority by the province of Ontario, and it's being a regulator. We always try and find we have a lot of competing interests, and we always try and strike a balance. We are an organization that we've transformed to one that said, quite simply, a prohibitive organization to one that's more options-oriented, pragmatic solutions. What we do when we have a proponent on a project or a stakeholder expressing a concern, we look at the options and we present the options now. It's our new culture and our new approach. So in terms of our Conservation Authorities Act, the province of Ontario on July 20th put out a discussion paper on the Conservation Authorities Act review. They posted it on the EBR and asked for a deadline of responses by October 19th, 2015. The purpose of this discussion paper and the review was to identify opportunities to improve the existing legislation, regulatory and policy framework that currently governs conservation authorities in order that they can provide services on behalf of the province, municipalities, and others. The discussion paper was based on 4 parameters, being governance, funding, roles and responsibilities, and other interests, and I'll talk about each of those 4 categories. So in terms of, in addition, we submitted directly to the province our submission, but we also have a collective voice. When the region of Niagara and the city of Hamilton also made submissions, we provided additional commentary and we joined in their submissions. And Conservation Ontario, as our chair alluded to, also submitted, and we provided a collective response. And our chair was on the AMO task force, who also submitted. So we had our voices either directly or indirectly via a number of organizations. So in terms of our governance, as the Chair Timms indicated, we believe the current model of municipalities appointing members to the board is working well. We have greater autonomy at the local level and at the local decision making. And when it comes to members of the board who I work with every day, they come from diverse backgrounds. And with the region of Niagara, each municipality is appointing or recommends to Niagara Region who they'd like to serve on our board. We find that's a recipe that's very successful. And we told the province that we'd like to see them continue with that model, to keep that local autonomy, keep that local decision-making right at the local level. Currently, the appointments on the legislation is every 3 years. We've asked the province to move that appointment to every 4 years to align with the municipal elections. Along our election terms, we elect our chair every term. We're asking that allow Conservation Authority boards to set the terms for their chairs and vice chairs. And what we've done, which has been very successful and what we encourage it to be legislatively, is that conservation authorities have an advisory board. We established, it's 2 years in operations now, a community liaison advisory committee, and we have a multiple of stakeholders with diverse opinions on that advisory committee. When we did our strategic plan, we heard at our town hall meetings that we weren't connecting with the community. So we established this advisory committee to have a two-way communication, and so we're always connecting with our stakeholders. So on our Community Liaison Advisory Committee, we have a representative from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, we have a representative from the developers, a representative from local and upper tier municipalities. We have and then we have public members at large. So what we did is created an advisory committee, so we're always getting a flow back and forth with when an issue comes about. The board often says, gives us staff direction to take it to the advisory committee and get some input and feedback. Staying with governance, there are some provincial issues that we see needs to have a consistent approach, so we're recommending to the province of Ontario that they establish a provincial advisory committee, making representation from different ministries and different conservation authorities and municipalities in order to provide some feedback and some consistency at provincial issues. And we deal with a lot of pieces of legislative framework, being the Growth Plan, the Greenbelt Plan, Niagara Escarpment, Oak Ridges Moraine, and our own act, the Conservation Authorities Act. At times, they're in conflict with each other, and sometimes the terms are different from one piece of legislation to another, and we've asked the province for them to better align the definitions and the approaches when it comes to all the different pieces of legislation. We often have a proponent who will come to us and they've experienced layer after layer of different legislation. We're asking the province to consolidate that in order that it makes it easier for a proponent or a stakeholder to bring forth an issue and then navigate through all those different pieces of legislation. When it comes to funding, our budget is relatively over $12 million. We get about 4% funding directly from the municipality, from the province. The rest, the bulk of our funding, about 68%, comes from the municipal levy. Now, our levy is not part of the region of Niagara or the City of Hamilton's or Haldimand County's budget. It is it's a separate levy that's not aligned with budgets per se for municipalities. Under our legislation, we ask the municipalities to levy on our behalf, more or less like school boards do. And in our legislation, that's what we do. We advise our three funding municipalities, again being Niagara, Hamilton, and Haldimand, how much we ask for them to levy on our behalf. And often that gets confused amongst the taxpayers who's actually funding the Conservation Authority. That's why we're pleased to see at Niagara Region a motion that was brought forth and adopted by Niagara Regional Council, where they're asking local municipalities, and I bring this request to you, local municipalities actually identify on the tax bill the CA levy. So people, individuals, for greater accountability and transparency, will see how much they're actually paying in their tax dollars towards the Conservation Authority. So we've submitted to the province that we do their good work every day and they should fund it. And that message has actually been consistent with whatever stakeholder they're receiving. We had a brief synopsis of the current feedback the province is getting, and a lot of them are indicating that conservation authorities shouldn't rely heavily on municipalities for their funding. There should be more provincial involvement in the funding, as we do a lot of their work and we offer a lot of programs and services on their behalf. The region of Halton and Conservation Halton actually went on a venture to incorporate funding for conservation authorities under the development charges. That was challenged at the OMB by the Hamilton Halton Builders Association. The OMB ruled in favor of the Home Builders Association and disallowed development charges. The region of Niagara then, the region of Halton then took it to the Supreme Court and appealed it, and that was also defeated, that appeal. So conservation authorities aren't allowed to seek funding via municipalities in their development charges. It was a non-issue for us, but we watched that provincially. But we're suggesting to the Government of Ontario that if they're introducing some type of carbon or cap and trade program, that there's a possibly revenue stream for, because we have like similar programs that we may be a recipient of some of that funding. Roles and responsibilities is another parameter. We've asked the province that we work closely with the local Ministry of Natural Resources, but we have very talented staff. We feel that they have the capacity and the ability and the credentials to designate the wetlands. Right now, we rely on the province to designate the local wetlands and the provincial significant wetlands, and then we regulate it. However, when we're sitting down in front of a landowner or proponent, the province is not there. So we're explaining their designations. And we find that to be a disconnect. So what we're submitting to the province of Ontario is to allow conservation authorities to designate provincial significant wetlands. So then when we're regulating them and we're conversing with the landowner or the proponent, we can justify or explain to them why these designations are occurring. We also are suggesting to allow Niagara to do a pilot program, and that is called biodiversity offsetting. So biodiversity offsetting is utilized in many other jurisdictions in the United States, Manitoba, Alberta, and some components of Europe, where if you are proposing a project that would, let's say, negatively impact an acre or 2 acres of wetland, sometimes you allow that, but you compensate it in another area where you generate a net gain of wetlands. So if you were to approach a development that would negatively impact, let's say, 1 acre, that we would offset that by creating 3 acres of wetland for always a net gain. The reason why we're looking at in Niagara region is, one is that it is a depressed economy here in Niagara when you compare it to the rest of Ontario. It is the second depressed economy next to Essex County, being the Windsor area, and there's a lot of development pressures. And where the market wants to grow, sometimes there's wetlands. So we wanted to do a pilot project that looks at the economic benefit, but also looking after our environment by creating additional wetlands. The reason why that's important, because Niagara needs more wetlands. We have a poor water quality. Our staff identify in our report card of poor water quality. One way of creating greater water quality is additional wetlands. And so we're looking at a pilot project to create more wetlands for Niagara region. So we've asked the province to allow this opportunity where we'd select 1 or 2 projects, we do an offsetting. We align ourselves with academia, Niagara College and Brock University, to study it to determine whether offsetting is a good project that we should embark here in Niagara. So we're suggesting a 3 to 5 year pilot project on 2 specific projects to review offsetting to see if it has any merit here. When we do see a violation of our regulation, currently we work with the landowner. Sometimes that's not always successful, where we have to take legal action. But what we can't do is tell them to stop what they're doing. We can only go to court and issue violations. It's a little bit different from in the municipal, in the Planning Act, where a municipality can actually issue a stop work order. We can't do that. When there's a violation, we can simply try and work with the landowner. Sometimes that's not successful. And what we're asking for the province is to allow us under our Section 28, our regulatory environment, that we issue stop work orders. And then an integrated watershed management. So that means connecting whether our watershed's in Binbrook or that in Fort Erie or here in Port Colborne, that we connect our watershed and when it comes to water quality programming. Our other areas of interest, when we do go to violation route, we go to provincial offenses, and we're asking that legal counsel be provided to the Justice of the Peace when they're making some significant decisions and precedent setting when it comes to our regulation. And we're asking the province to provide us support with our capital funding. And thank you, Mayor Maloney. That's,
Thank you for
my
that presentation, Mr. D'Angelo. At this point, we'd like to open the floor up for questions from members of council. Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Carmen. How are you?
Great.
Good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I have 3 questions. The first one is in regards to, you talked about how the Conservation Authority's levy would be broken out on a tax bill. So are you suggesting that the region would break that out for all the municipalities?
Through you, Mayor Maloney, to the councillor, yes, that was the direction the Regional Council gave to Commissioner Mo Lewis at the Region of Niagara, is that the regional staff, and we would work with the regional staff, they would break out our budget per municipality, and that basically provide municipal staff with the numbers in order that they can apply it to the tax. So all those calculations would be done at the regional level and provided.
My second question is in regards to extending the terms for the chair and the co-chair as well. Can you tell me what it is now and what you want it changed to?
Currently, through you, Mayor, to the councillor, currently the legislative requirement is that every January we elect a chair and a vice chair. And typically what we've seen historically is that it is the same chair and vice chair for periods of 4 years. So we're asking, rather than us have the requirement to elect every January a chair and vice chair, to allow the board in that term of board over their term to select the term that they would like, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 years, but to allow the board that flexibility in establishing terms.
But it would be within the time frame of like a term of council.
That's
okay.
Correct.
And my last question through you, Mr. Mayor, is in regards to the biodiversity offsetting. That one concerns me somewhat because it's kind of like, it's like economically driven as opposed to conservation driven in a way. So what I would like to know is there like a third party that would impartially review all the facts regarding or surrounding a project to make sure that one side doesn't win over the other incorrectly, shall we say? Thank you.
Great question, and thanks for that. And that's a fundamentally a great point to make. Who's actually going to determine whether this pilot project is successful or not? And so that is why we want to partner with Brock University and align ourselves with their research program and their Center for Sustainable Initiatives that they have. And they actually have a board and their professor group and their graduate students. So basically they would establish the baseline, they would establish the criteria, and what are the what is the matrix or what is the metrics for success, and at the academia level, and they would establish that. What we are concerned about is that sometimes when you allow development, our wetlands are sometimes really small, and let's say it's 1 acre, 2 acre, and then it gets surrounded legally, but it gets surrounded by development. What happens to that wetland once you surround it with development? It's going to die. And we know that, and the science shows us that. So when they're legally allowed to do a development around a wetland, we know that in other jurisdictions, they just allow it. They give it the conclusion, well, it's going to be impacted, but you take that acre and then you do an offsetting of 3 acres. And it's not just increasing size of the wetland, but it's also increasing the function of the wetland. Because different types of wetlands have different types of functions. And so to answer your question, to pinpoint it, it would be academia-based, not conservation authority-based, or economically driven-based. It'd be academia-based, but our pilot projects, our plan when we met with the province is that we would vet them, the pilot projects. They'd give it the green light if they decide to embark on this initiative, and then we turn it to academia to determine the results.
Thank you.
Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. D'Angelo, thank you so much for your presentation. I do have a question as well, and with regards to biodiversity offsetting. Do you have an idea as to how long it takes to develop a wetland?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to the councillor, there's many schools of thought. And so here's what I can submit to you. It all depends on the type of classification of wetland you're trying to produce. Because we have the Wainfleet Bog in our watershed. There's no way you can create a Wainfleet Bog. It's just a unique characteristic, and we protect it, and we protect it dearly because it's so unique. So there's certain wetlands that would take hundreds, if not more than a century, to create. But we do know what not farmers, but we do know what landowners do. And there's some speculators here in Niagara region. And what they do is they continuously plow their land. They don't farm it. They don't plant trees on it, but they're continuously plowing it because they're concerned that after 3 years, the Ministry of Natural Resources would come by and say, you know what, those are signs of a wetland, and start designating it a wetland. So what they do is what I describe as sanitizing the land. So we want to, for these landowners, we want to get away from that practice because we know there are certain wetlands, and we know because we actually have a restoration program. Last year we did 65 projects where our restoration team worked with private landowners in developing restoration programs, so mini wetlands on their properties. And what we want to do that is at a larger scale. We have the capacity and the expertise to do it. So I would submit to you 2 parameters. Some wetlands you can create successfully, but there's certain wetlands that you would need the creation in order for, depending on your religious belief of who created the wetlands, but you couldn't replicate it. So it's a measured wetland creation.
Thank you.
Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm with biodiversity as well. Thank you very much for your presentation. One of the concerns I have is that, especially here in the Niagara Peninsula, the area, there are many small wetlands. It's very characteristic of the Niagara region, which means that there are a lot of them that are being circled and then going to be drowned out. Now, if you're telling me you're taking 1 acre of land out of the wetlands, you're creating 3, then are you telling us that net-wise we are going to increase in wetlands? Is that what you're saying? And how realistic is that with the pressures that exist here in the Niagara Peninsula?
Okay, through you, Mayor, to the councillor, thanks for the question. So the board direction that we got as we're developing a pilot project, and again, we're only in the development stages, is the concept or the principle of net gain. If we were to embark on this initiative, it'd have to result in a net gain of both area and function of the wetland. So to respond directly, it would be a net gain. The mandate that the Ministry of Natural Resources received when forming their ministries was no net loss of wetlands. We actually are taking a step further, that we would embark and have an outcome, a positive outcome of a net gain. So that's my first response. The other thing I wanted to make reference to is our hierarchy decision. So whenever a proponent comes to us, we would establish 2 hierarchies. The first hierarchy is to simply avoid it, avoid the wetland. That's the very first parameter. Not a great idea. You're near this wetland. There's no way staff would affectionately call sacred, right? You can't reproduce it, and so it's just a no-go. The second is to minimize it. And we do this every day, where we will have a landowner who wants to build a home. And when we look at the drawings, they want to go ranch style. And we say, well, your footprint may cause some flooding to your neighbor, so why don't you go 2-story? So to minimize the impact. So avoidance, minimize, and then when we go past those 2 hierarchies, then we would do mitigation. And offsetting would be mitigation. The second hierarchy is location. So if we were doing offsetting, we would want to do, our primary is within the landowner's own land, is our first hierarchy. And if not possible, within our sub-watershed, because then it's like function for like function of the wetland. And then if you can't, the rare occasion is a watershed-based approach. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much. I'm thinking in certain areas here in the peninsula where there is major development, and some of them are near some wetlands. And they're probably being fed by the major aquifer that's between here and St. Catharines. Okay? If you're going to move out of the watershed that exists, isn't there a danger that in certain watersheds there will be no wetlands, and that the wetlands are moved out into other areas, which would create even a worse quality of water in certain areas compared to others? So what you're talking about, after all I'm concerned, is very dangerous. And if it's not monitored, I'm going to be following it closely. If it's not monitored, and if it's starting to create problems, I'm not going to be a happy camper, because we're giving you guys the authority to hopefully get us better quality water in the long run. And that's the idea behind all of this. And that's what wetlands do. They purify water. And if we're going to start moving them around in certain areas, they're not going to be purified, because there isn't going to be any wetlands to purify water. Hopefully, the Conservation Authority will be cognizant of that and will make sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette. Mr. D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mayor. To the councillor, it's always a pleasure speaking with someone who's done their homework, so thank you for that. And I would submit to you that our board shares those concerns that you've expressed. That I would tell you that our watershed, we actually have sub-watershed plans throughout our watershed, and when we're looking at an offsetting, we would want to confine it, again, that location hierarchy, to the parcel, then to the sub-watershed. Right now, the two pilot projects, because we don't know if we can achieve a successful outcome, but these two pilot projects, we would incorporate with academia, continuously monitoring of it. So that means getting graduate students and our staff out in the field routinely in order to gather the evidence and make sure we're hitting our benchmarks and our matrix. But absolutely, not to take away from your concerns, those are legitimate concerns. We see what they do in Manitoba. In Manitoba, it's basically 2-to-1. So if you impact it and you can create 2 acres of wetland here, then you get a green light. That is not our approach at all. We want to make sure it's science-based. So thank you for your comments. It's shared by my board.
Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. D'Angelo. When you were here, I believe you were here before when you first took over the job. And at the time, at the end, I said, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, I'm kind of encouraged because I'm seeing some things I like from what you're saying. I like the balanced approach rather than dictatorial, saying, sorry, you can't do it. It's nice to see you looking at figuring out a way to do it. The provincial significant wetlands, I totally agree, you need boots on the ground. You can't be doing it from an airplane flying over. That's got to be pushed, and I'm happy if you can get that. And the biodiversity, I think that's a good idea, and I think it can work, and I think it'll work. I think it'll work well for both developers and the Conservation Authority. And I think if it works as you say, where we get a plus, I think that's only good for the whole area. So I'm encouraged by what I hear, and hope to hear more good things in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bodner.
Thanks for the comments.
Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. D'Angelo. With regard to the offsetting, two-part question. A, what types of properties in zoning designation are you looking at for the offsetting program? Are they basically agricultural? Are they industrial, commercial, residential? And the second part is, what type of development are you looking to put on these properties? Are you looking for industrial, commercial, multi-residential, and the size? To start your pilot project, are you looking at smaller projects to start with, or is this going to be something where you're looking at 200-300 acres for multi-residential plan of subdivision on a property?
Okay, through you, Mayor, to the councillor, and I'm going to reserve my comments, and only the reason why is that it's still in the development stages of our pilot project. But I don't want to name what we're eyeing as the pilot projects because we have to get our approvals in place. But I would tell you that one is a significant multi-residential and commercial proposal of a grand size. That'd be the one that we know that is occurring in the eastern portion of Niagara. And so there's been some preliminary provincial approvals in place, but in order for that project to be successful, we'd have to mitigate somehow these wetlands that are there. And the second is a commercial enterprise in Fort Erie that is being proposed. And again, it has a significant wetland in the middle of its proposal, and so we would try and mitigate that. So we're choosing two already announced projects. We feel that they would give us a very good evidence and science whether we're successful or not. There is a risk, and I'll submit to you, there is a risk that these two projects may not be beneficial. But that's why we want to take a very cautious approach, pick two projects, although I will submit they're large in scale. But to be successful, we'd have to mitigate these wetlands one way or another. So that's our approach. And sorry, my comments are reserved.
Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo, for your presentation. It was very comprehensive. Certainly sparked a lot of interest by members of our council.
You got a smart council. Yeah, you got a smart council.
We appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to proceed with delegations once more. Pat Bowman is here tonight from the Friends of Roselawn Center, and it's regarding Wi-Fi services to Roselawn. Thank you, Pat, for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and city staff members. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak on behalf of Friends of Roselawn. The Friends of Roselawn Center are currently in the process of organizing a large fundraiser to be held at the Roselawn Center in the spring of 2016. Monies that are raised will help our nonprofit make further contributions to Roselawn's capital campaign, along with Force's fundraising operating costs. At past fundraising events held at the center, there have been numerous inquiries by patrons and vendors regarding access to Wi-Fi. There have also been requests regarding access to wireless point-of-sale devices, which are called POS, or using an in-house ATM machine. Our response has always been that there is something in the works, but we have no timelines as to if and when this project will be completed. Nowadays, access to Wi-Fi is like access to a telephone. It's a lifeline. It's part of doing business and staying in the loop. We have to be connected. Wi-Fi is currently available at the library, at the Valet Center, and at the Marina, which are all city-operated facilities. If the Roselawn Center is to become more accessible and engaged with the public, it needs to have equal or better Wi-Fi capabilities. Even a Wi-Fi hotspot in the Heritage Garden would help, since we have seen an uptick in the number of people, young and old, that visit this outdoor space. The last correspondence that we received from the City of Port Colborne's IT department was on June 22nd of this year. We have not received any updates since then from the IT department. Our question to Council is whether or not the City is looking into providing these services at the Roselawn Center for the year 2016. We don't know if there are monies budgeted in the 2016 for this venture. We would be happy to provide help in searching for grants to establish this service at Roselawn if the City is seriously interested in pursuing this project. If not, then we need to direct the patrons and users to another facility that offers public Wi-Fi service. So basically, what we're saying is we want to, even though it's an old building, it's 100 years old, we like to be updated and, you know, cut the cord, so to speak. And, you know, I know it's props. So if we could do that and, you know, make it more welcoming, invite more patrons into the center, because, I mean, this is a digital age, and it would encourage more people to visit, especially our patrons. So.
Thank you very much, Pat. We have questions of Mrs. Bowman? Councillor Bodner, then Councillor Doucette, and Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Harry, I guess. Harry, is there anything in the budget, I think I spoke to this on Friday when we had our meeting, about the need for providing 2016 facilities to people we're inviting in for meetings and whatever else they want to hold there. So just, is it in the budget, or be asked there?
Through your worship to Councillor Bodner, yes, we have allocated some funding towards it. We do have one quote right now, and we're looking at potentially another quote, if not two, for certain, to stay within the policy of 3 quotes. But yes, we will be allocating funds for 2016.
Thank you. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you to Ms. Bowman. Thank you very much for that. I always thought that Roselawn had it because our 2 other big centers here in Port Colborne have it as well. I mean, our marina has it, and so does Valet. So I just took it for granted that that one had it. And it would definitely be a major advantage. I mean, it's almost a necessity nowadays. So I definitely would support anything that would bring Wi-Fi to Roselawn. I think it's important, and I think it should happen, after all I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been 3 years that we've been discussing this, and still hasn't happened. I'm not sure why it hasn't happened, why we haven't gotten to the point of getting it done, but if it's in this year's budget, and if council were to approve that, can anybody tell me how long it will take for that decision to come into the reality of having Wi-Fi?
Director Senes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor, this was actually brought to, I know, our IT and to Harry and actually myself beginning of this year, in which IT has been reviewing it and determining what needs to be done at Roselawn in order to receive Wi-Fi there. We've never looked at Wi-Fi there because we didn't have as much activity there over the years. It definitely is. It has more activity there today than it did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So IT has been over there numerous occasions and looked at what has to be done in order to provide Wi-Fi services. There's security. There's security issues with regard to Wi-Fi if it's linked into our network system. There's a lot of cabling that would require to be done throughout the building, which isn't an easy building, what I'm told, to cable through. There's also different security switches and things that have to be done. So it's a costly venture. It wasn't in the budget for 2015 because most of our budget was more structure related. But the IT has brought that forward, and I know that we have it earmarked in 2016 to bring that forward to council for budget for 2016, knowing that it's become more. The request has become more prevalent, and I know that Ms. Bowman has brought that forward before, and I know that IT has looked into a number of different avenues because it would be a commercial internet service. There's monthly costs that would be incurred. So looking at all those different avenues, and what I was told through our IT was that although it can be quick and easy in newer buildings, with this building it's not as easy, and it's going to be a little bit more costly than setting up in another facility. So we'll be bringing that forward to council in 2016 budget, and if it's approved, then it'll be put forward in the new year as soon as budget is passed, and we would get the appropriate quotations and move forward from there.
Thank you, Director Sinez. Councilor Butters. Oh, you have further follow-up? Go
Yes,
ahead, Councilor
I do.
Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so we don't have a time frame. That's basically the answer to that. We'd have to make the decision and find out from budget. Okay, and just if anybody remembers, back in 2010 we had a strategic planning session. The council sat at Roselawn having that session, and we discussed the lack of Wi-Fi that day. So that's what I'm saying. This has been talked about for a long time. Thank you.
Councilor Butters.
I would certainly hope that in the 2016 budget process, if this council agrees to it, that all those quotes would be in hand and that this would be able to be moved on with a lightning speed. Thank you.
No comment there, right? Thank you, Councilor Butters. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bowen. I appreciate
you. I'll leave this for Peter as a souvenir.
You might need that, Pat.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Bowen. I'd like to move on to the mayor's report in our agenda. In early 2016, we will begin replacing all of the water meters in the city. Residents will be receiving a letter from the city in the next couple of weeks outlining the details of the program. The water meter replacement program is an important part of the process to ensure equitable billing for all residents. We look forward to the support and cooperation of the community to make this program a success. Last week, one of our residents, Dick Moore, was recognized with an Ontario Senior Achievement Award, the highest provincial honor for seniors, with only 21 awarded this year for the entire province, for the work he has done and continues to do as an advocate for the senior members of the LGBT community. In addition, Dick volunteers for the city's Senior Citizen Advisory Committee and is a past chair. Dick also spends time volunteering at the Port Thrift Store. Our community is honored to have such a dedicated individual living amongst us and supporting our community. The Niagara South Coast Tourism Association, with Councillor Ron Bodner as chair, has filed their 2015 year-to-date report. I encourage members of council and the public to review this report. The Weir Bridge. The St. Lawrence Seaway has announced that the repairs to the Weir 8 Bridge on Main Street have been completed and the bridge is open to traffic. I think the entire group of citizens in this community have breathed a partial sigh of relief. We have one more bridge to deal with. I wish to acknowledge and thank the businesses in this area and our citizens for their patience and understanding under these very trying circumstances. I want to thank the community organizations and businesses, as well as their employees and volunteers, for making last week's Santa Claus parade such a success. We had over 50 floats, including 4 bands, and I read in the paper that our parade has been rated the best in the region. A lot of time and effort goes into decorating a float for an evening parade, and by the number of individuals who turned out to watch this parade, it was greatly appreciated. I also wish to acknowledge and thank the city's Community Services Department and the Special Events team for coordinating the organizational logistics. They did an excellent job. Our next family event is New Year's Eve at the Valley Health and Wellness Center, sponsored by Valley. The YMCA is opening with a public swim starting at 12:30 p.m. on December 31st, with the rest of the activities starting at 2 p.m. Check out the city's website or next week's paper for the complete schedule. Family fireworks in the fields by the Valley Health and Wellness Center will be at 6 p.m., weather permitting. Come and enjoy a free, fun day with your families. And for the adults, drop by City Hall on Sunday, January 3rd from 1 to 4 p.m. for the Mayor's Levee. This is your opportunity to chat with local politicians in a relaxed setting about issues that are important to you. And that is my report this evening. I'd like to call upon Regional Councillor David Barrick to present his report. Thank you, Mr. Barrick, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, I'd like to speak a little bit about the 2016 regional budget that was approved on December 3rd. As Budget Review Committee Chair, I'm confident in stating that we've identified over $7 million in sustainable savings and reinvested in strategic areas and reserves without compromising service delivery. I believe that this approach ensures that we're able to make valuable investments in the programs and services that will lead the way to a stronger and healthier Niagara. Overall, the total operating budget in 2016 is $880 million, of which $325 million is from the property taxes, the regional portion of the property tax. The water wastewater net requisition of $108 million is a 0.03% decrease from 2015. And the waste management net requisition of $35 million is a 0.78% decrease over 2015. Our regional departments and our agencies, boards, and commissions, including the police, court services, housing, etc., all came in at a 0% increase, which to my knowledge is for the first time that's occurred. We do, though, however, have assessment growth and provincial uploading dollars for council's consideration. And the bulk of the last budget meeting was considering how to spend that $6 million. Some of those items were spent on an asset management plan, Niagara to GTA Phase 2 study, broadband initiative called SWIFT, which brings internet services to rural areas, including in rural areas of Port Colborne. Not only sustaining existing levels of service in Port Colborne for ambulance care, but adding additional ambulance services throughout the region, an ambulance master plan, Niagara Airport study, which I know is important to some councillors that sit here, and about $2.5 million being put into taxpayer relief reserve. The capital budget of approximately $165 million composes of 139 projects and is heavily weighted to traditional infrastructure. About 72% is geared towards water, wastewater, and transportation, such as $20 million to open lands for business and residential development, $10 million to advance GO Transit across Niagara, $50 million to improve Niagara regional roads and bridges, including $9 million in funding for road resurfacing, and over $11 million to build more affordable housing for residents, including funds received from federal and provincial governments. The total operating and capital budgets for 2016 is approximately $1 billion. The average household impact will be the same in 2016 as it was in 2015, and results in an approximate average over 4 years of a 1.45% regional tax levy increase. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barrick. And I certainly, before you take questions, I wish to compliment you as a chair of the committee on attaining an objective. I'm not sure it's ever been attained before, a zero-based budget increase. Good work for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Questions of Mr. Barrick? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Barrick. One of the areas that concerns me the most, and one of the areas where there has been no more money, because it said it clearly in one of the articles, but it was skimmed over very quickly, is the fact of Niagara Regional Housing. There are no extra monies in Niagara Regional Housing. There are presently 5,992 people on the waiting list, 2% increase. If we're going to take one of our issues that we've discussed here seriously about dealing with the poor, how can we function with this? There are 8-year waiting lists right now and 10-year waiting lists here in Port Colborne. So is there something different? Is there something I'm missing in here, Mr. Barrick, in some way, shape, or form? And you are going to be dealing with the poor and with regional housing in some way, shape, or form? Or is it going to stay status quo and the people who need it are going to need to continue on waiting 10 years?
Regional Councilor Barrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Doucette. So I do not today sit on that Regional Housing Board. However, I did the last term. I sat on it for 4 years. I'm very familiar with its operations. And so because I don't sit on that board right now, I can't speak to their decision. However, they did come to meet 0% guidance that the region had requested on their own, and I thank them for doing that. My goal is the same as yours, Councillor Doucette, in terms of tackling that wait list. And to date, the way that they've operated hasn't worked. That wait list is getting larger, not smaller. And so there's a couple of options. One that Regional Council will be considering is waiving the property tax that they have to pay. So currently, it's regionally owned, paying property taxes. So it doesn't make a lot of sense in that vein. They pay about $3 million back to the region through their property taxes. So by having that conversation, that's $30 million over 10 years. And I look forward to that discussion. The other thing is, and this is my view and my view only, Councillor Doucette, to be clear, perhaps they don't need to own all of those buildings and rather reinvest in rent geared to income subsidies. So there's about $60 million of capital required to fix and refurbish their owned units. That doesn't get one person off that waiting list. So clearly, there should be a shift in how the Niagara Regional Housing does business. And so certainly I'm in favor of having those discussions on getting some results on really and truly tackling that wait list.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrett. Those are a few things that I was thinking of as well. And I think we need more thought in it, because where we're going to deal with the poor and where we're going to be able to say there is no child that lives in poverty is here at the grassroots. And we've got to do it here, and we've got to do it within the region to be able to be successful. And I was just concerned when I started reading that there was no extra money anywhere for anybody. And I was trying to figure out how are we going to get the people that need this service. I like the idea of this rent sharing. I know that it has been done a little bit, and it appears to be successful. So, there's got to be something we can do, because we need to drop this list. We need to get people down, and every year this list goes up, percentage-wise. So it's a serious problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Barrett. Dave, thank you so much for what you just said. Finally somebody gets it, and that just takes a lot off my shoulders, because seriously, those discussions need to happen. Someone has to drive it. I'm not sure who that's going to be, but I'll be speaking to it later on item 18. But thank you again.
Any other councillors? There being none, thank you very much, Councillor Barrett, for
Thank you,
your
Mr. Mayor.
presentation this evening. Are there any councillors who have an issue to bring forward this evening? Councillor Butters, Councillor May.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Demery.
Just a quick question, perhaps through to CAO Louis. I had sent you an email regarding the possibility of some kind of a light at King and Clowley Street West that would indicate when the middle bridge is up, similar to what we have at the end of Clowley Street East to indicate when the Clarence Street Bridge goes up. And I know that you were looking into that region-wise, and I wondered if there was some update you could give us, because that would really benefit a lot of people who turn to go down towards the middle bridge, and then they get so far and they find out that bridge is up, and then everybody's turning around to get back up to the other one, and we just avoid a lot of confusion, especially when we're going to still have to wait for Main Street to get operational.
CEO Louis.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Butters, I have been in that situation myself where I've had to make the U-turn to or go through the fire hall parking lot, which is frowned upon. We had that discussion before at the director's level, and we I guess at the staff level, the idea was that the cost and the time that it would take was prohibitive, but I did have a meeting recently with I'm trying to see if I have an email, but I don't. The mayor, fire chief, director of engineering, and 2 staff from the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority. I did bring that concern to them. It is them that would do what's called a preemption signal. It preempts traffic from going all the way down to the bridge when we know that the bridge is going to go up. And they email reply from them, so this is about a week and probably 2 weeks ago today, 2 weeks ago tomorrow. The reply was that they are looking to see if there's some kind of technology that will be able to be implemented before the canal closes, or at least during if the repair of the bridge goes beyond the opening of the canal, which we hope it doesn't, because we know the canal will only be open for a few more weeks. So hopefully that traffic isn't an issue. The bridge raising isn't an issue beyond the next few weeks, but they said they're going to look into it, and I haven't heard back from them since then. So I can let you know if I do hear back from the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority.
Mr. Hanson, do you have anything further to add?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I had one more email post the meeting with the Seaway Authority from Alvina Girardi. They said they had some very good discussions with the region in terms of getting that in place, and they're hopeful they would be able to implement something, but that was about a week ago, and I haven't had anything further from that. We're just kind of looking forward at this point now, if that preemption is not available. The magic date is December 30th when the Seaway closes for the season, and of course Bridge 19A will be permanently down during that period, so there won't be a disruption. So looking forward to that date if the preemption doesn't get installed prior to that.
Thank you. Mr. Maine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hanson. I too, I didn't pull a U-turn, but I came across the bridge and the lineups were horrendous on both sides. And when I made the corner on Kalali, the lights at King and Kalali went to a 4-way stop. Now, is that initiated by the Seaway to move the traffic quicker? Because when I came back down later, the lights were working normal on the bridge.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was some work done today on the traffic signals in King Kalali by the region. Unbeknownst to us, I got an early email today saying that there was work going on and there were some delays at the intersection of King and Kalali. So we hadn't been advised by the region, but when I went down there, I made 2 visits during the morning today. The lights were in flash mode, and it appeared the traffic loops, the region had done some maintenance work on the traffic loops and then resealed them, and that was the minor delay that occurred today. But as of this afternoon, everything looked to be back to normal, so it was a minor disruption, really nothing to do with the Seaway as far as I can tell.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Demery, and then Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a bit of an announcement about the East Village Park. With all the trials that the East Village has had to deal with lately, one thing has gone very well, and that is the park. The revitalization of that park is swimmingly well. And thanks to Ron, you and your staff, Harry, for all the help that you've given the community. And it's also thanks to the community themselves. They went out and raised as many dollars as possible and gave it to the city to buy some of the things in the park. But if anybody's driving by, go down Welland Street, you'll see a park with a new sun shelter in there, and the community is very, very happy at the way that that's going, and I think the incentive is there now to go out and raise more money and do more for the park. But I just wanted to make sure that I passed along a big thank you from the community.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to bring a couple of questions that you actually spawned with your mayor's report, and I'll direct the first one to Ron, the Weir Bridge, and the roller coaster ride that you have when you're going west. We've been in contact with the region over that, and I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but you can clearly see that that deck is now higher than what Main Street is. So is there a remediation coming?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, right after the bridge opening, I believe it was December 7th, the Monday following the opening, I had been contacted by Councillor Danch, who brought it to my attention that there was a somewhat of a dip at the new approach to the bridge. I had the opportunity to go and visit the site with Frank, and we took a good look at it. observe the traffic going through. Later that day, I did contact the COA engineer who was in charge of that project. I had a discussion with him regarding the bridge itself and the change in elevation. It was obvious in looking at the bridge after the completion of the work that the bridge deck, as it was reinstated, was slightly higher. Not a lot, but slightly higher than the original deck. The elevation of the tracks, of course, is fixed, and the edge, the elevation at the bridge is somewhat higher, slightly higher, and the incline distance, obviously, between the two structures is the same. So it's a steeper incline, and it was more noticeable now. There was a bit of a dip there before at the tracks, but there is now a steeper incline at the tracks themselves. So the Seaway Authority engineer who worked on the project, was project manager, confirmed that to me. He said they went to some lengths with their contractor, Rankin, to try to remediate anything they could in terms of the deck itself and the lift of asphalt that went back on top of it. They tried everything they could, but because of the work required at the bridge itself, the structure, concrete underneath had to be reinforced and is slightly higher than before. So having said that, I asked him to monitor the traffic, take a good look at it with their contractor and their engineers to see if there's anything else that can be done with this difference in elevation between the tracks and the bridge deck, and he assured me that they would revisit that and have a look at it. So I will get back with them again and we'll see if there's any solution to this. It looks like it might be difficult given the two differences in elevations, but we'll look at it with the Seaway and hopefully they can come up with some remediation plan with the contractor.
Thank you, Director Hansen.
Two more issues, Mayor. Thank you. Through you to Ron again, and you brought up the installation of the new water meters. I had somebody question me whether or not that every technician that will install the water meters will be fully certified. Can you state that publicly, that everybody that installs the meters on our behalf or on behalf of Neptune, I think it is, that will be fully qualified to install the meters?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's a very good question. It's an issue that's come back in several municipalities that have done meter installs and meter retrofits. This procedure that we're going through with the retrofit is what's termed to be a turnkey solution. We'll turn the system over to Neptune. All their installers are fully certified. They are all employees of Neptune. They will have uniforms, badges, and every one of the installers that is working in Port Colborne will be fully qualified and certified to install water meters. The retrofit of the meters, meter for meter, can be fully done by these certified installers. There are installations, again, through Neptune that require larger meters, and those have to be installed by a licensed plumber, and that will be part of the turnkey solution. So they will be brought in for those particular installations.
Thank you, Director Hansen.
And the last item I have was brought up by Regional Councillor Barrick. With the region taking a look at the Niagara Regional Housing and lifting their property taxes from the regional tax levy, I know that I have heard a discussion where St. Catharines is going to take a look at removing it from the City of St. Catharines levy. And I was just wondering, through you, Mayor, to Peter, if we could have a report for the next council meeting, I believe the first one in January. What's the impact to the City of Port Colborne with regard to properties that are owned by Niagara Regional Housing, if any, in the city, and what that would mean to us if we so entertain the prospect of lifting their property taxes in the City of Port Colborne.
Director Sinnes.
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it's something that I can look at, Councillor Elliott, and determine what our municipal portion would be if that was to be approved and passed by council and brought to this council. I'll take a look at that.
Councillor Dench.
You kind of took that one away from me. I had the same Main Street ride question there, and I know I was an advocate and posted it on the side of my store and kind of got a little bit of heat for it, but that's okay. On a positive note, we had our snowflakes reinstalled down on Main Street, and Sid Grable Electrical rebuilt our lights that were failing badly and hung them back up. So on behalf of the Main Street merchants and everyone else connected with them, I'd just like to thank Sid and his staff for what they did for us, and he did it on a gratis basis, and I'd just like to thank him and wish him a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doucette, are you in, or you're good? Any other questions? Councillor Main?
Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Aquilino. I got this call roughly about 5 o'clock as I was leaving the house to come here. And it concerns basically what Councillor Butters was talking about a couple weeks back about these guys with the monster trucks and the ATVs going up and down the undeveloped roads and farmers' fields within the city limits. Apparently there's a fellow that has a monster truck that does this, and he has started washing his truck on the street, and great clumps of mud and whatever. And I know the city did something, I think it was in the spring, they dug up the boulevard and redid it because of the clumps of mud. They were all mixed in there. This continues to happen. What would be the recourse for the people who live in the area? Would they just call bylaw and put in a complaint, or how does that work?
Director Aquilina?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Main, yes, they can give us a call. We can look into it, see if there's any infraction with any bylaw, have a conversation with Mr. Hanson to see if there's anything on his end doing work on the city's properties, and see if there's any bylaw, any infraction. We can look into that and seek compliance.
Thanks a lot. This fellow was complaining because he turned off of Steel Street to head home, and there was a big slop of mud there, and he thinks that it shouldn't be there. And I know in areas where people are building houses, you have to put up a deposit to make sure you keep the roads clean, and I think these fellows with the big monster trucks, who are not allowed to go to the car wash to wash their trucks anymore, are doing it on city property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Being no further questions, at this time I'd call for any staff responses to previous councillor inquiries. Mr. Sinnes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not a staff response to a council inquiry, but just an update on when, with regard to the metered, the new meters being replaced coming in January. I just wanted to let council know and also the public know that we do have some letters going out to all the residents with regard to the meter replacement project, and also with regard to the frozen services. It's going to be together in one letter that's going out. But in that letter, I just want to let council know that when meters are being replaced, the old meter that is coming out, that the consumption is being read at that point in time, and we're going to be sending out a special meter bill specifically for the old meter. So they will get a bill for the consumption for the old meter. There won't be any fixed charges on that because it's just sort of bringing up to date the consumption and the billing for that particular meter, the old meter. And then when the regular bill goes out at the normal time, that's when that bill will be on based on the new meter's consumption, and that's when the fixed charges will be on their normal and regular bill going forward. So just want to let the public and council know that there will be a special bill going out just for the old meter, so that if anybody's asked any questions about that, that's basically what that would be.
Thank you, Dr. Sinnes. Any questions of Director Sinnes? Councillor Butters? Or Councillor Kenny?
So the bill, that little interim bill, is just going to be on consumption and what they've used, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hakeem, do you have a comment?
Yes, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public, I'm sure that you're aware the 2016 IIHF Ice Hockey U18 Women's World Championships in St. Catharines are January 8th to the 15th. There are 8 teams participating. Port Colborne applied to host one of the teams as a pre-competition venue, and we were chosen, and we're hosting Team Russia for approximately 6 days from January 1st to the 6th. They'll be on ice and off ice training, working not directly with us, but obviously we'll be facilitating their needs as far as on ice. And then the Y has also agreed to work with us and them, with the Russian team, visiting team, to have some dryland training and off-ice practice before the competitions. The challenge that we have, actually, we were hoping we could get some public viewing, but unfortunately the visiting guests have decided that their practices are going to be closed to the public, and it's just one of those variables that unfortunately, you know, with pre-competition strategy and things of that nature, during their ice time and during some of their private training time, it'll be closed to the public for about an hour or an hour and a half, depending on the length of the practice. But we have it all worked out as far as what their needs are, and actually it's kind of exciting having you know, one of the international teams being hosted here in Port Colborne.
Any questions of Mr. Hakeem? Will there be any games played in Port Colborne, exhibition games or otherwise?
In terms of the U18, no, but we have been requested to look at possibly hosting a development competition with the U16s, which are, you know, leading up to the U18. We're still waiting to get confirmation on the teams that want to play. That would be open to the public as an opportunity to view women's hockey. So that hasn't been confirmed with the Sport Commission as of yet.
Councillor Butters?
What was the dates again for their being around?
The competition dates are January 8th to the 15th. We're hosting the team from Russia from January 1st through to the 6th at various times throughout the day, but we'll be posting it on the website as well as at the Valley Center on the monitors.
It'd be nice to invite them up here on January 3rd, Mr. Mayor.
If that's possible, you can coordinate that?
Mm-hmm. I will reach out to the team rep and make that request, and I'll get some details from Nancy as well.
Thank you.
That'd be good. Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to move on to consideration of items requiring separate discussions. We've had a request from Councillor Butters that we deal with item number 7 first. Is we have consensus? Or Councillor Kenny, sorry. We have consensus, thank you. Councillor Kenny, do you wish to lead off?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Planning and Development Report number 2015-223, subject recommendation report for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14-13-14, 485 Northland Avenue.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Dash? We start off with the comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Residents in that area have been very patiently waiting, but I'm going to ask that this particular item be deferred. I don't have enough information from the report myself to make an informed decision. I understand that there are changes going to be made in January for the lodging of residents, and therefore, because of that, I am asking that this be deferred to the second meeting in January.
Mr. Aquilina, I'm concerned about time under the Planning Act. If we deferred it to that date suggested, would we exceed the time limit for this matter to proceed? And what are the ramifications if, in fact, we did exceed the time limit?
Mr. Mayor, the application was submitted at a certain time. The requirements under the Planning Act have passed, so it's not an issue if council wants to defer it. I'm sure the applicant is not going to be opposed to that. Considering right now it's in violation, it's the pleasure of council if you want to defer it, but it wouldn't be no issue under the Planning Act if council made a decision after the fact.
Is Mr. Veneri in the body of the council chamber? Are you agreeable to a deferral?
That's what the council required, yes.
Okay, well, the request has been made. There's no discussion on it. I was just asking you as a courtesy whether you would agree or don't agree. It's your application. But there's no discussion on this deferral motion. Is there a seconder for that deferral motion? Or Councillor Butters? Are you ready for the vote? The second meeting in January, I thought it was. Second meeting in January, Madam Clerk. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Move back to item number 2. Councillor Doucette?
Engineering operations, engineering. Sorry, forgot to push the button. Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division, report number 2015-2014, subject proposed traffic operations study.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Desmarais? Discussion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson, this is the report that we talked about, right? So hopefully that's going to give us all the answers that we need, but you need 2 councillors in there. I'm proposing to be one of the councillors. I have no problem. We also need a second councillor. The reason I brought it up is I noticed there's supposed to be names there and there isn't, so we have to put those names in there before we can pass this.
Do you think one of your fellow councillors could nominate you for one of those 2 positions?
Probably. There we go.
Moved by Councillor Butters, seconded by Councillor Desmarais, that Mr. Doucette be a member of the Engineering Operations Engineering Division, subject proposed traffic operations study.
Thank you very much. Now we need one more.
All those in favor of Councillor Doucette? Opposed?
Okay.
If any? You're opposed?
No, sorry, I was going to nominate someone.
Okay. Open for another nominations. Go ahead, Councillor Danch. Councillor Danch?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any further nominations? Seconder? Councillor Bodnar, seconded. Councillor Elliott, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why you have to get nominated to sit on a committee when you just don't say you'd like to sit on the committee.
Well, this is such an exciting committee that there may be more than one councillor who
Yeah,
wants to
just
sit
in
on
case
that.
there's more than one guy that wants this is one person.
So we nominate Councillor Doucette and then we vote on Councillor Doucette, and you don't know how many other people even want to sit on the committee before you have a vote.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. My comments.
I appreciate your interest. Councillor Danch, all those in favor of Councillor Danch? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Doucette.
And then we need to vote on
yes,
that
we got it.
motion.
So through your,
The question
And I
asked, does Councillor Elliott wish to sit on the committee?
and I'm going to ask the clerk how you could ask for councillors that want to sit on the committee, and we just nominated 2 people and they voted. So now you got your committee, and nobody else even has a chance to say they'd like to sit on the committee. I'd like to know how that works.
Councillor, the question was put to you, do you wish to sit on the committee?
My response would be, what difference does it make? Because we've already voted for 2 people.
Well, I suppose, Madam Clerk, can we move to rescind those appointments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, you could. It would require a motion for reconsideration.
Councillor Elliott, do you wish to make a motion for reconsideration?
No, forget it.
Okay. Call for the vote. Councillor Bodnar.
I think Councillor Elliott brings up a good point, though, like in future, how do we, there has been competition before for spots, and we've actually voted that way. So I don't know the answer. I'm just asking the question, but I don't know that we should just leave it as a, whether it pertains to this one, but I sure think that going forward, because I think we have another spot to appoint people. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Madam Clerk, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the process where the mayor opens the floor to receive nominations, that's the opportunity for another member of council to voice their interest in also serving on the committee. So typically, after the mayor indicates, are there any further nominations, whether it's for yourself or another member of council, that's the time for another member of council to express their interest.
Councillor Bodnar?
So then just to be clear, so we shouldn't vote on each one until we see how many are going, vote to appoint each one, until we see if there's more than the 2 available. And if there isn't, it's a non-issue. If there is, then we have to have a vote. And
I believe that was Councillor Elliott's point.
Sure.
Director Hanson, do you want to stand as well?
No, I'm already on the committee,
already
Mr. Mayor. That's it. No, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the report itself just puts out a template for the formation of the TAC committee and some of the things that could be considered. Certainly, council has the option of appointing multiple members to the committee if that interest is there. There's certainly nothing opposing council putting 3 members, for instance, and this would be additional coverage. If a councillor wasn't able to attend a meeting, then we'd still have representation. So this is just a suggestion of 2. Certainly, council has the option of appointing 1 additional if they would like to, just to point that out.
Thank you for your comments. I would call for additional members to sit on this committee if they so wish. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I had interest in sitting on the committee right from the beginning. But the manner in which we fill the positions, I don't think is correct. And I don't think that...
You've made that comment. You've made that point.
And going forward, I'll echo what Councillor Bodnar said. I'm not sure you have to nominate somebody. We should ask if anybody personally wants to sit on it, not to be nominated by somebody else. But if you feel that you personally want to sit on it, you can volunteer to sit on the committee, because I believe that's how we've done it with every committee that councillors are asked to sit on, is they have volunteered to sit on the committees and not been nominated by somebody else. So the format that we just went through, I think it has, that's the precedence, because we've never done that before.
You made a good point, Councillor.
So yes, yes.
Councillor Bodnar.
Just to, I'll nominate Councillor Everett while we figure out whether we're nominating or appointing, but I'll nominate, because we nominated the others.
Fair enough. Are there any other councillors who would like to sit on this committee? Then we have 3 nominated. 2 have been voted on. Councillor Elliott.
And
will
only
vote
1 more left to vote on.
Was there a seconder for that nomination, Councillor Elliott?
If you don't want to.
Councillor Doucette?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Yep. Yep.
Carried. Then move on to the main recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item number 3, David Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division Report number 2015-217, subject storm sewer system funding and strategy. A, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne receive the Engineering and Operations Report 2015-217, storm sewer funding strategy for information, and B, the Council direct the Director of Community and Corporate Services to prepare a fee schedule based on the types of properties currently in the tax database for presentation to Council during the 2016 water and wastewater budget deliberations.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Kenny? Any discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, it's good to see this. The way that we're breaking it out and getting it off the levy per se, because the increase in the levy that it shows. I guess my question is, how did we come up with the ratios on how we're charging back to the different classifications of properties? We're always looking for ways to stifle development. And when you hit heavy industrial for $1,000 a year in storm sewer charges, as opposed to $100 a year for single-family residences, we're hitting our commercial people for 3 times the amount that single-family properties are paying. Light industrial is 6 times. So I'm just trying to figure out, how did we come to the ratios to charge back to the properties?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer the question of Councillor Elliott. It has somewhat to do with the imperviousness of properties. Typically, single-family homes, larger grassed areas contribute slightly less in general to the storm sewer system. The higher the density of the type of development, being a commercial, a shopping mall, would obviously contribute more to the runoff, less impervious area. And in doing that, we looked at several models. We looked at Kitchener and a number of others in Ontario and some out west that had set up similar structures. There's quite a variety of different ways to do this. You can actually, some of the large municipalities have a full staff that does calculations on a regular basis. If there's a house built, they calculate the amount of imperviousness for each individual lot. We didn't want to get into that level of detail. We wanted to keep it fairly simple. These are suggested charges that would go in based on the density of the properties, and I think it's very close to what Kitchener and some of the others had done in their models. So this is open to suggestion and perhaps different variables on it. It will vary property to property depending on what you have.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Ron. I just did a real quick calculation. And if you total up all the properties that we're levying against, you get about 6,600, somewhere in that neighborhood. If you straight line divide that $845,000 into those 6,600 properties, each property pays $128. So you significantly reduce the levy against the industrials and the commercials, which we're really looking to develop and bring some people into town. And you don't negatively impact the single family and the multifamily residences nearly as much. As a matter of fact, you reduce the multi-residentials and you only add a little bit to the single family properties. And I just wonder if we looked at that formula just to see how it come out, because when I looked at it and I said $1,000 for heavy industrial, boy, that's pretty penal against them. And then our commercial people are 3 times what the single family residentials are paying. And I just thought, what happens if you straight lined it and just divided it out amongst all of the properties? It's $128 a property. Maybe a little more palatable to some of our commercial and industrial users. So I just thrown that out there. I just wondered how we got the ratio, and I knew that there had to be some formula that you used. And I just thought, you know what if we do it the other way and take a look at it? So I'll just throw that out for consideration.
Mr. Mayor, it's just an attempt. These rates, as I said, are an attempt to be fair and equitable. Typically, industrial lots, large commercial lots, and even light industrial have a much higher impervious area. They contribute more to the storm sewers, thus increasing the size of the storm sewer, increasing the cost. So this is a good type of discussion to have at budget time when we want to talk about how this could be implemented. This will require, implementing this surcharge will require some public meetings, some public input on where we want to go with this, because it's going to have an impact on everybody that pays a property, a water bill, I should say, in the city of Port Colborne. It will be a surcharge on it. So it's a good discussion, and it will be at council's discretion on how this levy goes forward.
Councillor Elliott, you finished? Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm extremely happy to see this. But how long is the $845,000 per year going to be collected? Because we're nowhere near where we should be on that. I think this should be almost double to start with, if we want to seriously get to, paying out those storm sewers. But is there a time frame thought here, or is it just a starting point?
Mr. Mayor, that rate is deemed to be what might be acceptable in terms of a surcharge, and it's not really related to the $54 million in needs which are identified. So the 30 years that we say would go towards this $845,000 would accumulate $25 million, which is less than half of, as you stated, less than half of what the real need is, and that's in 2015 dollars. So these rates would only be increased by the construction cost index, which is about 1.2% this year. And certainly it would be a good start. I think the $845,000, as we said in the February presentation at budget in 2015, is a good start at producing debentures, payment of debentures that can tackle these $8, $9, $10 million storm sewer areas that have to be tackled. So one or two areas could be approached. As it stands now, without a rate in place, no levy in place for storm sewers, we're really at zero right now at this point in terms of putting a big capital project forward in storm sewers.
Councilor Bodnar.
Just further to that, so then, stop me if I'm wrong here at any point, but, so what's happened up to now is that the storm sewer went on everybody's taxes, including the people in the rural area that already pay for their drainage. This is the first time the city of Port Colborne will be actually taking some of the tax off of the residents in Ward 4 that have been double paying actually forever. So I'm happy to see this go forward, and that's, so whatever the downfall is will just fall back on the regular taxes, not on just the people that have storm sewers. Am I correct?
Mr. Mayor, through you, we want to be clear that this $845,000 collected would be a capital levy for everybody in the urban area that could receive a benefit from the storm sewers. It wouldn't include anybody that's in the rural areas or that is in a municipal drainage area. There's outlying areas even within the urban area who won't be serviced by urban storm sewers. So it's strictly a capital component. There still is a levy across the city that is on for maintenance of storm sewers. So the flushing, the maintenance in existing catch basins, and all that work that's done now, TV work, is on the levy currently. And I don't, again, it'd be at council's discretion at budget time whether you want to remove that or treat it in a different way from this capital. This is really the intent to be capital and not a maintenance item in the budget.
Okay. Just it's a very good first start, so we can beat it up at budget time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hansen. Any further questions? Councilor Butters.
Yeah, just to go back to the rates. So these are proposed rates. So if this is for information, but the rates will be just hammered out at budget then, or is that the thought process here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Butters. It's suggested that this go to 2016 budget. The rates can be discussed at the budget. They could be increased, decreased, or whatever council feels is appropriate. I think our experience in the past on items like this, you may want to have a public meeting to see what kind of feedback you're getting from the public. This will be a surcharge on the water bill, but it's for the, I think the argument will be that it's for the greater good. So if we can improve stormwater drainage within the entire area, really the only way, as we suggested back in February, the only way to do this is to have it across the urban area. To consider putting a simple surcharge or a levy on a single area, I think some of the calculations we did in February were $600, $800 per year within that individual area to just get benefit within the storm drainage area. So that's probably not palatable, probably not acceptable to anybody. So this is a way to spread those costs across the entire urban area.
Thank you.
Any other questions for council? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. It's carried unanimously. Item number 4, Councilor Elliott.
Sorry, Mayor. My iPad went to sleep. Item 4, Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division Report Number 2015-226. Subject, Port Colborne Operations Center Estimated Cost Update. A, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne endorses the Class B estimate, including the additional cost for the shell-out expansion of the administrative building as presented. B, and that Council sets a construction budget of $12,500,000, excluding taxes for the construction of the Operations Center. C, and that Council directs staff in the Port Colborne Operations Center Technical Advisory Committee to complete the detailed design process to have tender documents ready for distribution in early 2016.
Actually, Councilor Elliott, you don't have to read A, B, and C. You can just read the heading there. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Oh, we've got one down here, Councilor Kenny. Discussion. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support the building, absolutely needed, and I will raise my concerns again with the construction of the shell out of an additional building at a cost of $1.2 million. And I will put this through you, Mayor, to Ron, I guess. The purpose-built building, the administration building at a cost of 1.9, we'll say 2 to round up because there's no pennies anymore. That comes in at 780 square meters. Convert it to square feet, gets you about 8,500, which gets us into a calculation of about $235 a square foot in construction cost. But I can't see what the square footage of the shell-out building is. So at a cost of 1.2, I don't know what the square footage cost is. Can you tell me what that is?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Elliott, the revised cost for the shell-out is $700,000 on the Class B estimate that we're presenting tonight. It's not 1.2. The original estimate was over $1 million. The revised cost is $700,000 at the present time. I'm not certain of the exact square footage, but I can certainly get that for you.
Okay.
That's just a shell-out. It'll have HVAC, electrical.
Hang on. Here comes
Thank
the
you.
answer. Here
That's
comes
why
the
I brought-
answers.
That's why I brought Jim. 337 square meters for the shell-out.
So it's almost exactly, almost exactly half the size of the admin building, right?
It's not quite that large. Again, what's the total? Do you have the total, Jim, on the total?
building is 789.
789. So a little bit less than half.
A little less than half.
But for a building that doesn't have to have washrooms, is it a full-out building? Is that what we're going to be? If we're going to shell it out, I mean, the administration building is going to contain the kitchen, the bathrooms, the showers, everything.
Yes.
For 1.92 ballpark. So we're going to build a shell that's less than half the size, and you say it's 700 plus contingencies, which gets us to, I thought we discussed this at the last time, 1.2 million. Basically, when you add in the construction cost of 700, the contingencies for about 5, gets us to 1.2. That's what we're going to put into it. So I'm trying to figure out how a shell building can cost you 1.2 when a fully, completely built building, finished inside, is only $700,000 more. I have a problem with that.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure of the numbers. I haven't done that type of calculation. We can assure you that and one of the reasons, the main reason we wanted the shell-out included in the tender is we will get very competitive prices, and the prices should be very similar to what's in the main administration building, except they'll be less because it is a shell-out. You still require HVAC, you still require some lighting, the electrical outlets, the cabling will be put in. The shell-out, this is just for an additional 10 to 12 employees in the future. So the cost of this, we've been told, will go up in the range of something like $150,000 a year, every year beyond that. So if the need is there 5 years or 10 years from now, you can do the math on that, start to get up to an extra $1 million. So I think what we're recommending here now is that we push forward quickly to the tender stage, and we'll have the shell-out cost included in the tender, and the council then would be able to say, yeah, here's the cost of it, yay or nay in terms of going forward with this. So it's important to get the cost in the tender and be sure that we know what the exact numbers are going to be. These are strictly estimates based on the Class B. These are experts that are doing these estimates of Class B and then coming forward as the Class A just before tender. And we're hoping that these estimates are at least conservative. If not, if the timing is right, we could get tenders that are much less than this, and that's the hope for it. In going to tender in January and February, that's a prime time to get this out. Our fear is that if this is delayed at all and we get into the summer season, these prices are certainly going to escalate. And if we lose the year in 2016, we're certainly looking at more money. So that's sort of the push tonight, is to get this to the tender and see what, beyond the Class A and Class B, what are the real prices from the general contractors.
Okay. I guess that's, you know, when you take a look at, I know it's expensive, and it's going to be, it's a large chunk of money to spend on a capital project. But when I see that, our admin building as it sits right now is 8,500 square feet, and we can't fit 10 or 12 people extra in an 8,500 square foot building, which kind of boggles my mind. And I'm thinking, well, if it's going to cost us 1.1, 1.2 to build another building to accommodate 10 people, maybe we ought to just leave well enough alone and leave the staff on where they sit and save ourselves the 1.1, 1.2 million dollars. But if we're only going to include it in this to see what prices we're going to get back and still have a chance to say no later on, which I kind of like, I'll go for that. But I want to make sure that we get a chance to say no if it comes back at a slightly elevated price. So, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, the commitment won't, the final commitment won't be until we sign the contract with the general contractor, and council is completely satisfied that we have a project and we're going ahead with it. Certainly, just to answer partially part of that question, 8,500 square feet as it's designed now will not accommodate 10 more people. It's tight, and I don't think there's a lot of room for expansion, even if the shell out isn't done. So if we need more water operators 5 or 10 years from now, we need more clerks or whatever the need's going to be or whatever is legislated, there's not going to be a lot of room in that building. And unfortunately, that's the fact of life in putting a cost together. And council can see it from this building. When we moved in 20 years ago, we're way beyond expansion here now, and we've crammed everybody in that we can get in. So that's the danger when you build a building.
Thank you, Director Hanson. Councillor Elliott, are you finished? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson. I'm looking through here, and I know that in the Class C estimate, there was the beefing up of all the pre-engineered beams for putting up any kind of solar if it became, if we thought that we were going to go that way, and hopefully that's where we're going. Does this Class B still have that in there? Because I don't see it. I've looked for it, and maybe it's just me not being able to see it.
Councillor Doucette, that is included. I just asked Jim if we have the actual number for that beefing. It's been included in the.
It's been included
in the pre-eng structure, but it was included.
Yeah, Class C, it was $57,000 more or something like that. So it would have been included in the whole thing. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? There be none, now Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I agree with Councillor Elliott that, we got to really watch, and question cost per square foot and everything like that. But the other part of it is, Director Hanson is absolutely right that who knows what the government mandates will be in another 1, 2, 3, 4, hate to build it, and then, we've seen it, it's happened, we've got proof of that. And boy, we certainly wouldn't like to be putting up a Quonset hut beside it just to stick a couple more people in. So while we'll watch the dollars, let's do it right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Again, any questions? Councillor Main.
This isn't really a question, it's just a statement, Mr. Mayor. My house is 1,200 square feet, and sometimes I wonder how 2 people fit in it. So, I mean, that's my logic.
We won't go there, John.
Thank you for your wise comment, Mr. Main.
Nicky will straighten him up when he gets home.
Only if you tell her.
Any further questions? There be none, call for the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Item number 5, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Planning and Development Report number 2015-209, subject sign variance request, 490 Empire Road.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Desmarais? Questions, comment, Councillor Kenny?
I pulled it for the councillor's conflict, but I also would like to ask a question through you to Mr. Aquilina. Mr. Aquilina, it says that we are to obtain, or the practice is to obtain a $700 variance fee. And I just want to make sure that, it says here that the application has been received, but has the $700 check been received?
Director Aquilina?
I don't think they should get off with not paying anything. Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, it has been paid. It would not be at this meeting tonight if it had not been paid.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Call for the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Carried, and noted that Councilor Bodnar did not vote on this issue. Item number 6. Councilor Maine.
Planning and Development Report number 2015-222, subject request for extension of draft of subdivision approval, file number D120112 or 12 for Rosemount Estates.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councilor Danch? Comment, questions? Councilor Maine?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Aquilina. This basically has been going on for 2 years, I think. And could you please tell me how much progress this company has made in 2 years? Or are they pretty well stalled with the MTO?
Through Mr. Mayor, actually, it's been 3 years. It will be 3 years. It lapses in January of 2016. It's been 3 years. I know that the owner of the land has actually sent out correspondence to the Ministry of Transportation. They have gotten back to them. They're entertaining that notion of acquiring the land. Aside from that, I'll be frank, there hasn't been much other action taking place on this property.
Councilor Maine?
Yeah, through you to Mr. Aquilina, one more quick thought. Now, I know they pay taxes, so all the power to them. But is there any fee for the paperwork and the request for extension or any type of office work that you have to do?
Through Mr. Mayor, there is a $1,000 application fee to get an extension of draft plan approval. And there's a regional review fee as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Councilor Maine, you finished?
Yes, I am.
Any other questions or comments? There'd be none. Call for the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Item number 7, Councilor Kenny. Oh, sorry, that just completed that. Item number 13, Barbara Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community and Corporate Services Division Report number 2015-228, subject Grant Policy Committee.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councilor Maine. Discussion? Councilor Butters.
So as per the last discussion, are we just opening up the floor to those councillors who may be interested in sitting in this committee, sir? As opposed to nominating them?
A question to our clerk. Can we have more than 2 members sit on this committee, councillors?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, yes. If that would be council's will, it would be, as we dealt with in the last, it would be an amendment to the motion. I interpreted that as a friendly amendment, but I would recommend that that would take place if more than 2 councillors expressed an interest.
I'd be interested in hearing the expressions of interest for 2 or more positions on this committee. Councilor Kenny, Councilor Desmarais?
I'm interested, but not heavily invested. If someone else wants to.
All right. Councilor Kenny's front and center. Are there any other councilors?
I think she's going to win.
There being none, then I would suggest that this recommendation be amended to include the names of Councilor Kenny and Councilor Desmarais. All those in favor of that suggestion? Ooh, have a seconder for that. Councilor Butters. All those in favor again? Opposed? And could I call for perhaps you to put that recommendation forward once again, Councilor Butters, with the names included?
that the Council of the City of Port Colborne appoint Councillors Demery and Kenny to the Grant Policy Committee along with the Mayor to oversee the distribution of grants to non-profit organizations. And further, that the City Clerk be authorized to advertise for 2 members of the public to sit on the Grant Policy Committee. And further, that the terms of reference be approved.
Again, the seconder for that recommendation was Councillor Doucette. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Item number 14. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community and Corporate Services, Community Services Division Report number 2015-172, subject 2015 Flavors Festival update.
Seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Bodnar. Comments? Questions? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought this was kind of worth just bringing forward because there's some changes to what maybe people have been used to seeing in flavors. So I just wondered if Harry maybe would want to give a brief Coles Notes version, just so the general public would know what's being proposed here and the change of date and venue, and that would be okay.
Manager Hakeem, could you give us a little bit of background there?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Butters and members of council and the public. Well, we obviously after the hiatus, we had a successful sort of relaunch, we felt, in terms of all the promotion and advertising that we were undertaking with regard to the new look of flavors. Weather hit us hard, and unlike any other festival throughout the region as well as the province, we were one of the few that actually stayed viable and did what we could under the conditions. Regardless of that, we evaluated it again, and we have a pretty vibrant committee actually, and I'm quite thankful the fact that there's public participation as well as support from members of council like Councillor Kenny, and I know the mayor has participated. And we undertook a SWOT analysis basically to determine, the venue. H.H. Knoll is a wonderful park, wonderful festival area with a lot of possibilities. It's a large area. But somehow, I guess, thinking outside the box, I know staff got together with some feedback, and we proposed to move the venue to Roselawn. The other important part of that was the fact that Roselawn also, with its increased activity level, controlled environment, also afforded us to bring down our costs. We're going to look at those costs a little bit more closely during budget, but we've already determined through the committee level, we discussed numbers that were quite favorable in terms of what the feedback we got from members of council as well as the mayor and the general public that are participating on this committee. So that's going to be in favor when we bring it forward during budget. The other aspect was the controlled environment. We're going to be using a lot less in terms of infrastructure and resources, a lot less in terms of manpower. So again, costs are going to come down for us to host this event. And there's potential for minor expansion depending on how we decide to frame it. We undertook a complete SWOT analysis, which is outlined in the report. I can dwell on that later. The value with Roselawn as well is the fact that we have an indoor venue that we can move some things inside if we had to, depending on inclement weather. Aside from that, I think we have a good plan going forward. We're going to pretty much mirror all the information that we used this year, particularly the social media, which gave us in excess of, even with the bad weather, in excess of 17,000 hits and likes in terms of the festival itself, had the conditions been optimal. Again, we're always subject to weather regardless. We've moved the date, thanks. We've moved the date to September. A big part of that is because we've been competing with a lot of vendors that are challenged to go to different events, and every weekend throughout the summer, particularly the height of summer, it's difficult to secure food trucks. And this also, through a little bit of research by event staff, looked at the possibility that there's a higher volume of food trucks as well as input from Kevin excuse me, at the Smoke and Buddha, indicated that it's a very favorable time frame with regard to the food vendors as well as the craft beer and the VQA wines locally. So For all those reasons, I mean, we've highlighted it in the report. I know we've highlighted a lot of other information which is of value from a metric standpoint as well as financial, which we clearly demonstrated our hit. But in fairness, I think we reevaluated it, looked at it very closely. We're going to try and really work hard to bring the costs down and try and put together a good event. Same model, pretty much, that we felt worked well, except for the weather.
Thank you for that breakdown, the Coles Notes version, Mr. Hakeem. Any other questions? Councillor Butters.
So because that venue, I guess you could consider it, or would you consider it substantially smaller than H.H. Snow Park? So what are you looking at for kind of numbers, if, because I think it's a great idea. I'm just looking, just from a numbers perspective, is it like a third smaller or half the size, or if you can, I don't even know if you can do that.
It's considerably smaller to H.H. Knoll. I think the footprint in terms of what I think we've kind of did a mock plan. I know it's difficult to read, but we can still get the same amount of vendors in place. It's going to be a little bit more intimate. The challenge is going to be, one of the challenges will be if we outgrow it, or if the area outgrows itself. We don't know.
Okay.
Parking. Well, parking, actually, we did address that. Because it's in the, on the weekend, we do have access to some parking. I know around the neighborhood. We experience it with Roselawn, with the theater, summer theater, where most of the shows are pretty well sold out. In fact, most of the performances we've had lately are sold out. Parking is always going to be a challenge, but we've been managing that quite well in terms of the way the community's been responding and parking all over and making and taking the extra few blocks to walk. We have access to the school. We'll consult with them as far as parking nearby in their parking lot. So I think we'll try and address it as much as possible. But we really feel it's going to be more of an intimate setting and a little bit better in terms of just the overall showcase right in the heart, we feel, of the municipality. One big advantage we also have, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is as a licensed establishment, we're actually in good shape with the liquor board. It's one of the few facilities in the province where the front lawn is licensed, and so we can take full advantage of that as well.
Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hakeem. Harry, considering that the proximity to Portal Village and the fact that it's in a residential area, are you likely to have this cater to an older crowd and not being maybe quite so appealing to the younger crowd?
Manager Harry Hakeem.
As far as catering, I think the demographics that showed in the social media, we actually hit a pretty good market. It was quite a range, but we're targeting the market that certainly can spend the money and has the money to come in, because we are entertaining the idea of gating it just for the sake of having another source of revenue. Again, it's an option that we're putting on the table. We can manage the gating at that facility much easier. And again, it'd be a modest fee. But we're not necessarily going to target any particular demographic. It's open to the, and the choice of music will be varied. Again, I can't say exactly what genre we're going to be using, but there was local entertainment was sort of the emphasis, and we're going to work on that premise as well. That was the direction from the committee. But we'll hit all demographics if we can.
You're finished, Councillor Demery? Councillor Bodner, then Councillor Elliott.
Thank you very much. Harry, I think there's so many good things about this this facility. It just gives you so many more options to do, and we don't really have any gated opportunities other than here. That's a huge advantage to us, I would say, to get an actual positive count on how many people can come through there. We'll know for sure. The fact that it's licensed, you got the option of going inside if inclement weather hit to some extent, and wouldn't it be awful if we had so many people there we had to limit the number of people coming in? I think that would be a great success. So this is a really good idea. and if we had Wi-Fi, and please, Mr. Hanson, a sidewalk beside the Roseland Center, because many people will be parking out there. That didn't go through at the last budget, but I sure hope we see some of that in there. I'm actually asking you to again give us a price. It's a dangerous situation along there. You see it at all the events. We've got to do something about that. So Mr. Hanson, please give us a reasonable cost on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Harry. I'll pick up on what Ron just asked. It'd be great to have so many people that are standing waiting to come in. So I'm going to assume that with the limited area fenced in, with the amount of vendors, that there will be a capacity attached to the grounds. Yes, no?
There would have to be. As soon as we define the area, obviously we'll work with fire, safety, and we'll determine that, absolutely. Once we control the area and gate it, then we have to have some measure of control, including tents. We have to take that into account. So we're going to look at all those possibilities and have it under control.
Thank you, Mr.
Just two other quick questions through the mayor to Harry. Have you been in contact with the vendors? I'm just reading from the report. It says the vendors were particularly pleased with the footprint and overall layout 2015 Flavors Festival provided and the branding. Will the vendors be particularly pleased with the footprint and overall layout of the 2016 Flavors location?
Yes, because we have consulted with a few just by handpicking the ones that participated, and we're going to use something similar in the way it was laid out, but there are other options that we're going to look at. So some of them have been consulted with, and particularly with Kevin from the Smoke and Buddha, if I can say that. He's been very pivotal in terms of dealing with the craft breweries, as well as some of the other vendors that he obviously goes to all the festivals, and being on the committee has helped us kind of guide the way with regard to how some of the other vendors would fall in line and follow suit with this new venue.
And last inquisition for you. It says here that we had four local wineries participate. With the move to that weekend in September, there's a little event that takes place in St. Catharines at that time, commonly known as the Grape and Wine Festival. Will that negatively impact our ability to attract local wineries down here? And that weekend, the 16th and 17th, is there anything going on with the Grape and Wine Festival in St. Catharines that we know about? I'm trying to think of what their parade day is and their big festivals weekend. I don't know if that's the same weekend or not.
I believe there is an overlap second week. I know that event staff have looked into that. The impact of the wineries, we don't anticipate that because there's enough of them around that we're going to attract the same number, if not more. You know, it's going to be another option for patrons if we can reach the market like we think we can with the use of rack cards, which was really, really popular, as well as the new contract engagement we have with all the vendors. We expect them and we ask them to also post on social media. We're really, really pushing the social media angle because of its reach with so few dollars invested. Like I said, for that past weekend, we hit over 17,000 people just with views and various likes, dislikes, whatever the case may be. So again, we're going to take the same approach, and that was in 1 week. We hit 17,000. So I think we can do, you know, that much better in terms of trying to. We've moved it from the height of summer. I know it probably rides on the heels of Canal Days, but so what? We'll be there to do it, and I think we can do just as good a job, if not better, hopefully, at this venue.
Councillor, no one else, I guess. No further questions? Then call for the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any? Carried unanimously. Item number 15, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Community and Corporate Services, Community Service Division, report number 2015-208, subject community services, schedule of fees and rates for 2016.
Thank you. Seconder for the recommendation? Councilor Main? Discussion? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Harry, one question. I don't see listed a rate for summer ice. Are we not going to have ice throughout the summer, or did I just miss it? I'm just looking at the bottom, and it just says ice time rental agreements for the season September 16th to March 17th.
We normally do show summer ice. Councilor Elliott, through your worship, Councilor Elliott, I'm going to confirm this, but I'm going to, it would be the rates that we have already posted here for the summer period, which we will define, because the summer ice is on rink 2, not rink 1. Rink 1 is reserved for a trade show. I think we're due for a trade show this summer. Our rates are there in the front as far as what ice is being used. And I can certainly confirm that, but I'm certain that that's the rates that we use instead of duplicating that information.
So just the rates that are posted.
Right.
So our winter rates are the same as our summer rates?
Yep.
Ooh, because I'm thinking that the cost to generate the ice and keep the ice in the summertime is a heck of a lot more than it is in the winter. Can you confirm? Can you bring back something or email me a comparative what other centers are charging for summer ice compared to their winter rates?
Through your worship, Councilor Elliott, we do that analysis, and I know our rates are well within most of the regional rates. They're probably in the lower end by maybe $1 or $2 on average.
Okay.
We base that largely because we want the volume. Volume supersedes, trying to go to other centers that might charge that much more.
Okay. If you can.
It works for us, but I can certainly get back to you with summer ice.
Yeah.
I'm going to confirm that.
Okay.
With Brian.
Perfect. Thank you.
A question to Madam Clerk. Can we pass these schedules of fees and rates for 2016 as presented, subject to a proviso that we would pass another fee for summer ice rentals at a subsequent date, preferably the first meeting in January?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the bylaw report can be approved this evening, and the bylaw can also be approved. And if there is an amendment required, it could be dealt with at a later time.
Mr. Sinnes, I would assume you would prefer this proceed this evening. Okay. Mr. Elliott, any further questions?
No, that's it. Just no.
Any questions from the balance of council? There being none, call for the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Councilor Elliott, were you ready to oppose, if any? Carried. Item number 16, Councilor Main.
Community and Corporate Services, Community Service Division Report 2015-225.
Proposal for the North Atlantic Professional Hockey League.
Yes.
A seconder for the recommendation? Councilor Kennedy. Discussion? Councilor Main?
This isn't, this is just to give you a workout, Harry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hakeem. Just curious, now this is the first I've even heard of this league, so I figure they're new. And they want to play Saturday night and possibly Sunday. Now that interferes directly with minor hockey, or those time schedules opened?
Through your worship to Councillor Main, those slots are open. We can work with all the organizations and make the times available as necessary. The schedules are posted well in advance, so there's a lot of juggling as far as ice bookings, but once they're in our system, it's locked in and everybody's well aware as to how ice time is divided up as far as games and things of that nature. The only impact is on tournaments, but again, those are happening normally February, March, and would be less impacted, and I think they get into the playoff format if this were to go forward. So we've discussed this with all the various tenants, the marquee ones, minor hockey, the Whalers, and again, we looked at all the ice time that's available, and that would still work for their games because half their games would be at home, the other half would be away. The other benefit to this, frankly, is the fact that they'd be using what would normally be dormant ice that we couldn't sell during the day, and there's no arena in Ontario that sells ice time during the day, generally, unless you're shift workers and you're fortunate to have those types of leagues. But you know, they've dried out. But that would be another advantage having them there. So it doesn't impact any other groups. At least we would work with everybody to make sure there was minimal, if not no impact at all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Now, what would have been the issue? Because I noticed the recommendation was to not accept their offer. Is it a fear of monetary, paying rent, or putting up a financial, I don't know what you call it. What was it?
A bond?
A bond, yes, that was the word I wanted, the bond. You know, because if we go through all that process of setting up schedules and all this other, and they bail, would that be one of the reasons why this recommendation came down to say they wouldn't recommend this team?
Through your worship to Councillor Main, there are a lot of logistics involved in this. First of all, we're not struggling with the idea, but you know, this is a professional versus amateur sports that we support locally. It's a different direction for this corporation to take, supporting a professional league. We'd have to evaluate a lot of variables if we looked at I just recently received their proposal just before the report. We were preparing this, and they talk about sponsorship opportunities that they want to market and sell, which we want to have care and control over, particularly within the arena. There would be quite a bit of negotiation going on with respect to securing funds for that. They're a professional outfit that would have to pay their players, so they'd have to look at source of income, gating it. We would want a piece of that gate. There's competing interests. When we discussed this with our other tenant, they felt that it would impact them negatively in terms of the market, bringing another team in that would perhaps impact them. This is their feedback, which we've shared in the report. They wanted access to a dressing room, which again, we've experimented with that in 1 year, and we found it was very challenging with facility staff to try and work out those logistics, because we needed it for tournaments. We needed all the dressing rooms for tournaments. There were many other factors that we have to take into consideration before we can move forward. This would really put a lot of extra, I won't say pressure, but certainly a lot of extra attention to detail in trying to run that facility with 3 major hockey tenants, when most facilities can manage with 2, like we do now, as well as with the growth of the women's hockey, girls hockey coming into play. That would give us 4, which is a nice problem to have on one hand, but it again, we're dealing with a professional outfit, and that would take some further in-depth discussions with them at you know, other levels, where you know, I'd have to bring in, you know, the treasury, everybody. They may want more. We don't know fully yet, and it's a fledgling league. Actually, they're just starting in 2014, so they haven't even had a year under their belt. But we're flattered that they're looking at Port Colborne as a market. They love the facility. They like the access to it. It's close to you know, the American border, so the teams would be traveling, wouldn't be traveling too far. But for a lot of the reasons I just cited, we just felt that our position was that we wouldn't support, this organization coming in.
Thank you very much. It helped me out quite a bit. Thanks.
Additional questions? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Harry. I hate to pick on you tonight. I guess my only concern was that the only huge roadblock I could see would be the ability to provide a dressing room. You say that we would look to take a cut of the gate. We take a cut of anybody else's gate right now?
Through your worship to Councillor Elliott, no, because all the other groups are amateur. We haven't considered that at this point. It's not to say we can't in the future, but at this point we have not impacted on anyone else's gate.
Okay, but amateur doesn't mean not-for-profit. Right, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
Amateur doesn't mean not-for-profit, right? Amateur. The junior A team that's playing in here can turn a profit. They're an amateur hockey team, but they can turn a profit.
Well, the idea of not-for-profit is the fact that they're registered, perhaps, and they have other benefits with a not-for-profit status, much like Friends of Roseland Center. They're not-for-profit, but yet, they reap the benefits of getting 50% off for various rentals or waiving their rental depending on the level of activity they're providing and the support that they provide at Roseland with the fundraising venture. The Whalers, for example, in this case, or minor hockey for that matter, whatever return or profits or surplus they have, they put back into their program. And actually their record is actually quite impeccable in terms of their receipts being up to date, all those activities. This organization, if I can dovetail that thought, we don't have a history, we don't know, and it's a bit of a risk we don't know much about.
When it says in the report that we don't support, we'll continue our support of amateur hockey, but don't really want to go into professional. Why would we not want to when we're looking at a revenue stream of $25,000 that we don't have right now? I can understand if they're looking to generate their own revenue streams through rink board advertising and on-ice advertising and in the arena advertising. I don't know if those discussions have been laid out. I did refer to having a bar, but I don't know if that's been mandated by this club. I find it kind of ironic that the same reasons that the junior team is using to exclude this professional team to come are the same reasons that the previous junior B team that was here used to exclude a junior A team from coming. Because you split the market, you split the talent, and how do you draw? And now the junior A team's the only game in town. When somebody's trying to be a predator on their territory, they're using the same excuses that the team that left used. And we said, well, who cares? We're bringing these people in anyways. I don't know if that irony falls on anybody else, but it sure fell on me pretty hard. And I looked at it and said, isn't that interesting? It also says that the owner of the junior A team sent an email to council members. Well, I guess because I was the only one that voted against letting them come in here, I must have been excluded from receiving that email because I didn't get it. So with the additional information about this league. I'm just trying to figure out, other than the dressing room issue, why we wouldn't want to have a conversation with somebody. We're sitting around here talking about how we're going to drive extra revenues, and we've got a chance that they're going to fill ice during the day when nobody else uses it and play on a night when nobody else uses it, and we're going to turn and walk away from a potential of $25,000 in revenue without even having a sit-down conversation about what are your wants and needs and how do we accommodate you. So I'm just trying to figure that out. I get the dressing room situation. I know that's a huge issue. Been in hockey all my life. But to not even sit down and just kind of throw this back, I know it's a startup league. I get that. But it may be worth sit down, having a conversation, see what their requirements are, especially on the revenue side. I mean, if they're looking to come in and take over our rink boards and our on-rink advertising and advertising throughout the building, yeah, that's going to be a huge issue because those are funds that we require just to operate on the level that we do. But I don't know, just to kick them to the curb without vetting it out and listening to them and seeing what their demands would be, I don't want to cut ourselves short because $25,000 is $25,000 more than we have right now. So I would support the discussion with them to see what their bottom line is and what they need, and then go from there before just saying completely no, go away. Comments?
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Any comment, rebuttal? Councillor, Director Keki, Manager?
Through your worship to Councillor Elliott, it is ultimately Council's decision. We can go back to them and discuss things further. They're very anxious to move quickly forward with a lot of ambitious ideas, which we highlighted here. The bar is a sensitive issue. It's a health and wellness center. You know, again, we didn't even discuss proceeds and anything along that line. Control of the advertising. They mentioned media, camera. I can't even remember the various sport media that would come in. There is a caveat in some of the agreements right now, if TSN or others show up, that we need to see those contracts to see what sort of return they're getting so that we get our fair share as well. That's something that's been identified even with the junior program. So in fairness, we can go back and have further discussions, but we felt there was a bit of, call it pressure, to bring this report forward so that council was well apprised. The email that went out came from the former head coach of the Whalers. That was just on his own accord at that time. I didn't even know about that email till after the fact, but it was worth mentioning because at the time it was under the Whalers organization that information was shared with some members of council, which identified, you know, what the league was about, their strong points, their weak points, and the lack of success they've had in the past. So it was just more of a cautionary piece of information, but from our standpoint, we brought forward, I think, as much information as possible, including their bylaw, their proposal, their outline, to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that we've had some preliminary discussions on. But we can certainly go back and talk to them with more length and try and iron it out without feeling pressure that we have to sign on the dotted line. Not that we would, but certainly bring something back to council that might iron this out a little bit further. But based on preliminary discussions and some of the logistics that we had to work with, and working with our facility staff with input from them, you know, giving up the dressing room is a big deal to us, and it would just be a challenge, and they'd want to outfit it and do things to it that might compromise. And again, we don't know all the details, but it might compromise. Just to add to your thought about the two junior B teams at the time, we're in a position to facilitate both teams equitably from an amateur standpoint. That was it. This is a professional outfit. That's what kind of raised a little bit of a flag for us to kind of, we not dealt with a professional outfit at the municipal level unless you're OHL, Junior A. Then that's a totally different agreement. And I've seen those agreements, and they're challenging to manage.
Thank you. Councillor Butters.
Well, I know that somebody's going to have to mark this on the calendar because I think Councillor Elliott has valid points, and I'm kind of agreeing with them. So please, somebody mark it on the calendar because I know it doesn't happen often. I think that there's some value in just going a little further down the road. Like, I've only heard negatives, but I have a feeling there must be some positives to having what I know about hockey, you know, you could put in a thimble. I don't know much about hockey at all, and that's okay with me. But business is like a business venture. There must be some positives in having professional type sports in your city as well. And I don't know that they've been fully investigated as perhaps you know, the positives to having that. So I would be in favor of going a little further down this road. Now, as far as booze in the Valley Center, I'd be saying no. There's all kinds of hotels in Port Colborne for that, and God bless them, that will be fine. Not in the Valley Center on, you know, as far as I'm concerned, but I don't have any problem at all going a little further down this road.
Any other questions? I have a couple questions, Mr. Hakeem. How many teams are in this fledgling league, as you put it?
There would be a total of 4 with growth to another 2 or 3 the following year, and they're looking at Quebec as a potential market in 2017, 2018. I believe they outlined that in their proposal as well. So there's only 4 teams. It's American-based right now, out of Connecticut, I believe. Excuse me, and we'd be the Southern Ontario organization.
And their sponsorship proposals, does this conflict in any way with the recent agreement we entered into with a sponsorship coordinator, especially with regards to the various events that we have?
Through your worship to members of council, I don't know about a conflict, but it certainly would be a challenge, and we'd have to bring our coordinator on board with this from the onset, because we would want to, and they were anxious to see what kind of support they would get. And there are some positive aspects in the report. We do outline them. But I think if council's will is for us to go back and discuss it further, we're certainly in a position to do that.
Any further questions? Councilor Wagner?
If council directs you to go back, I certainly would like to see also the expenses that would be incurred, you know, I can see in addition to a dressing room. I doubt whether they're going to want to go into a dressing room the size we have, but that's certainly up to them and for you. But there needs to be some dollar figures put towards that, and, you know, staff time to bring this forward. You know, none of those should be a stopping block, but we need to know what they are, you know, and if we do all that and they crash and burn, then, you know, what's our options to undo it or reuse it?
Any other questions, council? We have the recommendation. A number of councilors have suggested they want additional information. Does anyone wish to advance a motion for deferral to allow that information to come forward, or shall we proceed with this recommendation at this time? What's your wish, council? Councilor Elliott?
Yeah, I'll ask for a deferral until such time as Harry can at least get some more information on what their wants and needs are as far as revenue streams, especially within the facility. That'll be major.
The deferral to a fixed date, Mr. Hakeem. Do you have a time period when you think you could produce additional information as requested by council?
I'm going to aim for the end of January. We'll go back to them immediately and let them know what direction we're being given, to your worship, to members of council. And we'll aim for the end of January right now. If anything changes, I'll make sure everybody knows.
Could we meet the 4th week in January or the 2nd week in February?
Either or will work, but I'm going to aim for the end of January right now, the 4th week.
End of January would not fall within our January council schedule.
I don't have a date.
The second meeting in January, the first meeting.
Yeah, the second meeting of January or the first meeting in February. We can do that.
Mr. Elliott, it's your motion. What would you?
I think there's a rush. I mean, they're not looking to start next year.
No, but we're trying to lay our plans out actually 6 months to a year in advance as well with ice time. So, yep.
We'll work on that time.
Okay, I'm not. Is it the second meeting in January or the first meeting in February? Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It may be helpful to indicate the first meeting in February, and if the report comes forward sooner than that, then that will be acceptable as well.
Always a practical solution. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Is everyone clear on the motion to defer? Any further discussion on the motion to defer? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item number 18, Madam Damaris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Niagara Regional Housing NRH 2015 third quarter report to council.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councilor Doucette? Discussion, Madam Demarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do hope all of council has had a chance to thoroughly read the report that was brought to us, and recognize. I hope you're also aware of the really severe need for social housing that we have within this community. The total wait list that's being discussed in this report actually takes care of 10,494 people. That's a lot of people on that wait list. This is not the number of applications, that's the number of individuals. That's a lot of people. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't go and break down those people that are from Port Colborne. And that's not too surprising. I've read through the minutes of their last year's meetings and the year before that. In last year in particular, there's not a lot of talk about Port Colborne. And there's a good reason. We have no representation on that board at all. And it's really disturbing to me because we have a great need here. We're seeing the absence of housing all over the place. We're trying to find ways to get people in decent housing. And as Councillor Barrick said tonight, he sees different ways of doing it, but he no longer sits on that board. Their board of directors consists of people from Niagara Falls, from St. Catharines, from Fort Erie, from Thorold, from Welland, and in some cases several members from each of those communities. There's no representation from Port Colborne whatsoever. And I don't know how we would go about changing that, but I do hope there is a way, and I would ask that whether it be staff or maybe you, Mr. Mayor, sitting on Regional Councillor, could find out how we can do something about that. Because I firmly believe we're not going to see our needs taken care of unless we do have representation. We need a voice at that table. It's very, very important. So this is really disturbing to me, and I wanted to make sure that I did bring it up tonight and ask if you would move forward with that.
Point well made.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It disturbed me greatly when I read, and it was sort of almost passed through very quickly, as I indicated earlier, about the fact that there is no extra money for social housing. And the NRH, Niagara Regional Housing, in Port Colborne, the last report we got, I believe, was 2 years ago. The lady came here, the lady that wrote this report, and indicated that the waiting list here in Port Colborne was 10 years. So when someone needs housing now, odds are in 10 years they probably won't need it anymore, or they will have moved on to something else to try to find something else. How we justify not putting any monies into supporting our needy, I haven't figured it out yet. Now, Councillor Barrick was great in giving us some ideas of what he's thinking of, and I like some of the ideas he was talking about, but it's to get that point and get to that point. And if we don't have any representation from Port Colborne, then we don't know what's going on anymore. And that, I agree with Councillor Desmarais, we need to find a way to put representation back on there. We need to know so we can have someone come and tell us, guess what, this is what's going on, is there something we can do to, right now we don't have that. And that's totally out of step for us. And I know we've always had, we've had representation for many, many, many years. What happened this time, I don't know.
Any other questions or comments? There be none, call for the question on this issue. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. That concludes the number of items to be discussed. Looking at the agenda, are there any notices of motion from members of council? There being none indicated, then I would call for a motion for adjournment. And then immediately move on, call to order. The mover and seconder for the agenda, now that we were all in favor. Moved by Councilor Doucette, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Call to order. Our regular meeting of council for December 14th of the following committee of the whole meeting. That's meeting number 36-15. Are there any addendum items, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One this evening. The bylaw associated with the zoning bylaw amendment for 485 Northland Avenue has been withdrawn due to the deferral of the report during the committee of the whole meeting. So the remainder of the bylaws have been renumbered to suit.
Thank you. I have a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councilor Doucette, seconded by Councilor Desmarais. Any questions or discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councilor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 5, as I have a business inside Shirkston Shores.
Thank you. Let the record indicate Councilor Bodner's declaration of disclosure of his interest in the issue of item number 5. I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of Council 34-15 held on November 23rd, 2015. Councilor Doucette, seconded by Councilor Kenny. Any questions or discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. Councilor Doucette.
Item number 5 for the conflict.
Thank you. Any other items? Then we call for a motion to approve the items not requiring separate discussion. All those in favor? Question? Moved by Councilor Danch, seconded by Councilor Main. Any discussion? Being none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Doucette. So consider the item number 5.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Planning and Development Report number 2015-209, subject sign variance request, 490 Empire Road.
Seconder, Councilor Butters. Discussion? Being none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any proclamations tonight, Madam Clerk? Are there any minutes of boards and commissions or committees? Minutes of the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board of Management of October 20th, 2015. Call for a mover and a seconder. Councilor Main. Seconded. Councilor Bodner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Consideration of bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be enacted and passed. Bylaw 6313-13915 being a bylaw to establish a schedule of rates and fees for engineering and operations for 2016. Bylaw 6314-14015 being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for 2016. bylaw 6315-14115, being a bylaw to establish penalty charges and interest charges on payments due to the municipality for 2016. Bylaw 6316-14215, being a bylaw to authorize the temporary borrowing of $4 million for 2016. Bylaw 6317-14315, being a bylaw to establish a grant policy committee. Bylaw 6318-14415, being a bylaw to establish a schedule of rates and fees for the Valley Health and Wellness Center, advertising, recreation programs, Roseland Center, Nickel Beach, municipal parks and pavilions, commemorative markers, Sugarloaf Marina, and event services. Bylaw 6320-14515, being a bylaw to confirm council representation on the Committee of Adjustment. And finally, bylaw 6320-14615, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of December 14th, 2015.
Thank you. I call for a motion to approve these bylaws in bulk. Moved by Councillor Main, second by Councillor Desmarais. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried unanimously. Now I call for a motion to move into closed session. Madam Clerk, do you wish to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council do now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. A, minutes of the closed session portion of November 23rd, 2015 council meeting, and B, Community and Corporate Services Clerk's Division Report 2015-227, subject appointments to boards and committees, Port Colborne Medical Education Recruitment and Health Services Committee, Social Determinants of Health Advisory Committee, Everyone Matters, Economic Development Advisory Committee, and Tourism and Marketing Advisory Committee.
Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. We'll now move into closed session. Councillor, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just noted that the motion to move into closed session does not outline the subject or the exception under the Act into which council can move into closed session. So I just wanted to note that it is under the personal matters about an identifiable individual.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for pointing that out. Then we'll adjourn to go into closed session. Thank you. Thank you for staff for waiting through this meeting, and thank you for members of the media for being here as well. And a Merry Christmas to members of the media anyway, then we'll see you